welcome to a bonus episode of Watch, Review, Repeat. This is the podcast where two best friends discuss the latest in film and television and then do it all over again the following episode, or the following bonus episode. Oh, man. I'm really going to drive this home, that this is really momentous for us to be recording a bonus episode.
It's
my name is
been
Colton Brown,
a while.
And that this man talking on the other end, it's Andrew Meadows.
Good afternoon, sir. Good evening.
Hello.
Good evening.
Good evening. Yeah, you gotta set the tone for this episode here, this bonus episode here. Did I not just say that I would really be hammering it home? Yeah, bonus episode 27 by my count. Had to crunch the numbers on that one, look back at some old episodes, because it has been a long time indeed since we've done a proper bonus episode. We technically did Studio 666 as a bonus episode, and that was also coincidentally a horror themed episode, but it was not obviously done because it was a horror film. It was done obviously out of respect for the late Taylor Hawkins.
That's right.
But the one before that, the one proper bonus episode that we did was covering the Spider-Man franchise before Spider-Man No Way Home.
Wow.
And it feels like it's been ages since No Way Home came out. So that should probably speak volumes about how long it's been, which is to say we're coming up on a year since the last bonus episode. Now, it's been obviously a very busy, packed year for the both of us. We have recorded a few special episodes, celebrating, some happy occasions in our lives, but this is another sign that we are back to normal, right? We're back and doing the thing. One thing, unfortunately, this episode is the 7 decades of horror, and we basically have selected representatives from each decade. That's kind of the idea of it. We intended to have this out as a Patreon timed exclusive episode on Halloween. That did not happen, but we did watch all of these films throughout October in the lead up to Halloween, perhaps on Halloween for some of these. I don't know if you watched anything last night, but I did.
No.
So I took advantage of every day in October that I could to prepare for this episode, because 7 decades, 7 films. That's a lot of hours that add up.
That's 70 years worth of film.
It's 70 years worth of film that we're talking about. Yes, it's quite the span of time, you might say. But we didn't get this out in time, obviously on Halloween for the timed exclusive release, but that's okay. We're only a couple days removed, one day literally from recording this from Halloween. So we're pretty close. We're pretty close. I think people are still in the spooky season mood. I don't, just because it's November 1st or November 2nd or 3rd doesn't mean you're ready to quite turn the page. You know what I mean?
No, it's like leaving your Christmas tree up until like New Year's.
Yeah. If you take your Christmas tree down on the 26th, people will judge you for that.
Yeah.
They will judge you. They will say,
curmudgeon,
do you not really like Christmas?
You Grinch.
You can't enjoy the spirit a little bit longer, Exactly. Very Grinch-like behavior, I would say. But yeah, so even though it's not Halloween, we're gonna talk about some spooky things. We're gonna get into the spirit of Halloween with this bonus episode here. So to explain bonus episodes briefly. And by the way, I should say, if you're listening to this on the regular feed, well, it's definitely way past Halloween time, but them's the breaks, right? The idea is we reward people that support us on Patreon with the timed exclusive release of these episodes, so it's a little, closer in time to when they seem thematically appropriate. And you also literally just don't have to wait, however long it takes for to come on the regular feed. So there's some great advantages to supporting us on Patreon, including getting bonus episodes such as this one. It's only $2 a month, and you can do it by going to patreon.com/watchreviewrepeat, and just going from there. So we would encourage you to do that. We use the money, the Patreon funds to put back into the podcast, whether it's covering hosting costs or website costs or upgrading our equipment. We've upgraded microphones in the past and stuff like that. We put the money to good use. It's not just going straight into our pockets. But if you want to do that, check us out on Patreon. If you already support us on Patreon, we thank you very much for your support. But yeah, 7 decades of horror. We're covering 7 films on this. We actually have announced a few of these already. I should say the last regular episode that we recorded was the She-Hulk and Werewolf by Night double feature, which will obviously not sequentially be the last episode that would have been out on the regular feed by the time this comes out. But I think as of that episode, we had announced, I think, 5 of the 7 films that we're covering. So we've got a couple surprises even for people that have been up to date as of recording this. And so the 7 films that we're covering in order, spanning 1960s all the way to the 2020s. Can you see, we're only 2 years in. It feels kind of silly to say 2020s, right? But here we are. We're covering Psycho. We're covering The Exorcist. We're covering A Nightmare on Elm Street. And then we'll be covering Bram Stoker's Dracula. And then once you get into the 2000s, turn of the century, Shaun of the Dead, The Endless. And then last but not least, we're covering Hellraiser, the Hulu exclusive 2022 Hellraiser.
So they kind of sparked the want to do a horror kind of bonus episode.
I think so, because it came out early October, and from there it was let's watch some fucking horror movies.
Yeah.
Let's watch some classics, obviously. Some very recognizable names in that bunch, I'm sure, for even if you're not a horror fan, you know what Psycho is, you know what The Exorcist is, you know what A Nightmare on Elm Street is, and you probably know what the Shaun of the Dead is. And then we've got some more obscure ones, The Endless. Maybe you don't know what that is, but stay tuned. You'll hear about it. You'll hear about it in extensive detail. And maybe you haven't thought about Bram Stoker's Dracula in ages, but you're going to think about it as we talk about it. And maybe you haven't watched Hellraiser, or you have. It's available on Hulu now. So we got a lot of things to talk about. So I'm really excited to get into it. Why don't we do that just now? 1960s to the 2020s. We can really see the evolution of the horror genre from the early days to its modern incarnations. I mean, it's a really fascinating, almost kind of case study, right, of how filmmaking technologies evolved as sensibilities changed.
That's probably the most noteworthy. I mean, how sensibilities have changed.
I mean, even from the 60s to 80s, you're seeing or even in the 60s and 70s, you're seeing quite the dramatic change in terms of what's okay to do, what's morally objectionable, and then these days it's just like blood and gore everywhere, man. Otherwise, you're not doing it right.
Right.
Like that. So one sort of side effect, or at least something somewhat unintentional, I think, somewhat intentional, I guess, in terms of how we selected these films. There was no real obvious method to the madness, other than let's just pick some films that we've either seen or sound good to be kind of representatives. But we also tried to embrace doing different genres of horror. Is one thing that we really wanted to do in terms of not just doing 10 slasher movies, right? We didn't want to have Friday the 13th, A Nightmare on Elm Street, and,
right.
and Halloween. Definitely don't want to do Halloween. We're Halloweened out after that last one.
God, what a piece of shit. That was terrible.
This is redemption. This is redemption for Halloween Ends. I put Halloween Ends out, the regular episode on Halloween to cater to the Halloween base. That was what I did as a, well, if I can't get the bonus episode out, then at least that will be up on Halloween to disappoint everyone. Maybe they enjoyed us ridiculing it, perhaps. So that's always the fun of talking about bad movies, right? When we tried to embrace different genres, watch different kinds of movies. Some are very intentionally scary, some are very intentionally gory, and some are very intentionally trippy or horny. One of these films is a very horny film, so we're kind of all over the place in terms of what we've covered here. So I think it's exciting. With all that said, would you like to dive into our first representative of the 7 decades of horror?
Yeah, let's do it.
So we're going to begin with a film that was released September 8th of 1960. A film by the name of Psycho. Which is a psychological... It's a psychological horror thriller written by Joseph Stefano, directed by, of course, Alfred Hitchcock. It stars Anthony Perkins, Janet Leigh, Vera Miles, John Gavin, and Martin Balsam. It's about a Phoenix secretary who embezzles $40,000 from her employer's client and goes on the run and checks into a remote motel run by a young man under the domination of his mother. I'll go ahead and flag, I guess, right now. And certainly, I think the spoiler embargo has lifted for a great many of these films, perhaps with the exception of the most recent Hellraiser. But we're going to do full spoilers for all of these because, come on.
You have to.
You know what I mean? We'd be here forever if we're trying to delineate between non-spoilers and spoilers. And honestly, especially these early ones, like, you know them. Even if you haven't seen these movies, you know these movies. You know what Psycho is. You know what it's about. You know what The Exorcist is. You know what it's about. You know who fucking Freddy Krueger is, right?
I should hope so.
So we're gonna do full spoilers for all of these. So you have been warned. So Psycho. Talk to me about your viewing experience with Psycho. Have you seen it before?
I have not. I don't think I've ever seen an Alfred Hitchcock movie. Maybe I've seen maybe The Birds. I mean, I think I've seen that.
That would be a Hitchcock. That would count.
But I don't know if I've seen it in like passing or if I actually sat down and watched it. So I'm not 100% on that. But I will say, Sarah and I sat down to watch this film, and Sarah was digging it.
Digging it. Okay.
Yeah, I think that one thing. Yeah, I think that one thing that works to this particular film's advantage is that it's not, if you're not like a downright horror kind of person, this movie first and foremost I think is a thriller.
Yes, and I think that this ties into our earlier discussions of how the horror genre has evolved. This is pretty fucking tame by most modern standards, right? Like, there's nothing. I mean, there's a couple moments of terror, and and suspense, and and
there is a skeleton and some slashing,
and right, and there is some more obvious horror elements in terms of like stabbings and some chocolate syrup getting thrown about in a bathtub, and the reveal of the mother, and like, yes, the skeleton, basically like a corpse. Like, those are some pretty common horror tropes that were probably shocking then. But for us,
absolutely,
yeah. Okay, all right, that's a thing. I've seen worse. I've watched Human Centipede. I've seen people being fucking sewn together. This is nothing for me.
We're a little desensitized, right?
Watch Hostel. I've seen eyes getting popped out and getting run over by trains and whatever the hell else happened in that fucking movie. And it's 18 sequels. But yes. So yes, it's a thriller. I agree. With some horror elements, paving the way for perhaps what's to come.
And I think that's the critical thing about this movie. This movie, I'll be completely honest. My knowledge on films before this is slim, very, very slim. I don't know a whole lot.
Okay,
but you can see the inspiration that this film had on future films. It changed. I would assume that this film, and evidently it did. I mean, in reading the Wikipedia here, it was inducted into the Congressional Film Registry, and as being something that was historically and
culturally significant or something like that. Is that
exactly
kind of the idea?
Yeah. Very significant. It's a significant film. And so it changed the genre. I mean, flipped it on its head, and it was a big deal, apparently. And I mean, it's still a very compelling movie to watch. I was interested in it. It's a good story. And one thing that I looked up while I watched it, I had to re-look it up, but the initial woman that gets stabbed, which I think is Halloween's what's her face's mom, I think.
Yes. She is the mother of Jamie Lee Curtis.
That's it. Yes.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. But anyways, Scream Queens. She stole $40,000 from this firm, right?
That's right. Yeah.
It's like don't get me wrong, 40 grand will buy you a nice car, you know.
Did you go back?
What's the big deal?
What's that mean in terms of
in
how
today
much that would be worth today? Yeah.
Today that's $401,000. It's almost $500,000.
I would be upset if my $401,000 that I don't have went missing.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd be sad if my $40,000.
I would be upset about $40,000 going awry as well. You're not wrong.
Yeah, but she stole that shit and got tore up by.
Cost her dearly.
Yeah, cost her dearly. But it's I really enjoyed this movie. Don't watch a lot of the classics, a lot of the black and white stuff. Apparently, and that's another thing. They made this movie black and white. I think because they didn't want the blood to be red. Like they avoided. I read somewhere that they wanted to they're already pushing the envelope. They don't want to push it that far, right? So
you get your film banned if you're making it too realistic at the time or something like that.
Yeah. But
which is you say that and I'm invoking my real life side of outside of the podcast. It's a pretty common thing for criminal trials for graphic images to come in a black and white form because it kind of obscures how graphic it is. So
really,
so yeah, it's still a modern trick these days too.
Wow, I did not know that. Yeah, a little fun fact there. A little courtroom fun fact. Yeah, cool movie. Liked it. Sarah liked it. Kicked off spooky season with it.
Nice.
That's not necessarily true because I watched Hellraiser before this, but it was the first one off. I tried to watch these movies.
Once we had the inception of doing this bonus episode, it was.
I watched them in order
of
yes,
okay.
Exactly. And I really enjoyed the experience of watching them all in order too. But cool movie, good actors. I thought it was very well acted. I think a lot of times you watch these older movies and sometimes they feel a little hokey. They just
like almost the type of acting is either stagey or just kind of just different. Like the subtlety is not rewarded in some types of old timey performances. I think
that's not the case with this. It felt like It felt pretty modern to a certain extent.
Perhaps that's a Hitchcock thing,
maybe
a more impressive director than others of his time. In terms of maybe getting great performances out of people, and obviously there's a lot of technical merits I think that can be lauded for this film.
The cinematography was great.
Yeah, great. The score. I mean, I think that's one of the biggest things I think that stands out is it's just an incredible score. It's Bernard Herrmann, who I think was a frequent collaborator of Hitchcock's. I mean, it just sets the tone from the get-go. Like even the credits is just like straight up like, I'm going to stress you the fuck out, like right away. But throughout the film, it keeps you on your toes. It's a really, really tense score that, makes the hairs stand up. It's really, really well done. I mean, it's one of those things without the score being as iconic as it is. I think that it would still be good, but that elevates it to, I think the level of acclaim I think that it has had, obviously, and the 7 decades that have succeeded it. There's a reason it still stands up to this day. I think the score is a big part of it. So yeah.
And Bernard Herrmann's pretty decorated too. He worked on a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
But anyways, yeah, that's pretty much all I got on Psycho. It's a pretty influential movie, well acted, pretty spooky, and I can see why it's culturally significant. See, it's important for the genre.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I agree. I think it does stand the test of time, which I think is probably more difficult for films of this era. And I think that this one, perhaps eschewing the tropes of the era, is what makes it feel still timely, I guess. In terms of what it does and the story it tells and how it tells that story. I loved it. I mean, I think one of my favorite things and one of I think the most creative things about the movie is its narrative structure, which is I think even unconventional for the time, but also very unconventional for modern times as well. It's exceedingly rare, I think, to have a movie that kills off its effective protagonist halfway through the movie, right? That's a little unusual, and so it basically shifts into a tale of two halves of this movie, where you have this buildup of stealing the $40,000, and that basically lets her end up at the Bates Motel, and then that storyline obviously drives why people are looking for it to a certain extent, but the $40,000 are kind of a MacGuffin, a red herring a little bit at a certain point. And I think that's just a really interesting way to tell the story is, are you rooting for her or not? Like, oh shit, should she be caught? Should she get away with it? She's getting hit on by the creepy old guy. Like who are we rooting for here? And this guy working the hotel seems like a nice, well-adjusted gentleman. Or maybe he's not that well-adjusted, or maybe he's a psycho. Maybe he's psychotic.
But it does start. Yeah. It's the tension. You can cut the tension with a knife throughout the entire movie, because she starts with the theft. She starts with stealing the money, and then she gets followed by the cop, and the whole from Jump Street. Yeah. And she's seeing some.
And she's looking over her shoulder.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's seen a guy. Yeah, I mean, I just think it's so interesting how it builds up to the moment, to the shower scene, the iconic shower scene, and her murder, and then how it just completely changes from that point. Characters, I mean, obviously we see more involvement with Norman Bates, and then obviously his deteriorating, or I don't know, perhaps already deteriorated psyche. It's just really fucking interesting how they did that, and I think that's one thing that really stands out to me is just the way that they made it. So, yeah, I guess fully agree. I mean, that holds up to this day. I think that's one big thing about it is it's tense, it's gripping. The ending is satisfying, I think. The reveal, I mean, it's one of those things I think people kind of know the reveal, right? At this point, and go ahead and spoil it, that Norman himself is the killer, dressing up as his mother and basically having, I guess, a split personality kind of deal. It's very interesting how that all kind of plays out, and having a little 5-minute psychiatrist explanation at the end of basically like, here is what happened. Like almost feels
that's a symptom of time. It's a symptom of the time.
That feels more of the time of just being like, we got to wrap this all up in a nice tidy bow, but it's still satisfying. It's still just like, it's almost like I felt like it was like a Twilight Zone type of thing where it's like
a little bit, yeah,
to you like and here's the moral of the tale, and here's how it went down. Like, I don't know, I kind of liked that. Like, that made it feel more old timey, and
but it wasn't bad.
The sensibilities of the time, but that's okay. It just felt, it told you what happened. That's okay. No bones about it. So yeah, I quite enjoyed Psycho. Definitely worth a watch. I want to see, I think a lot of these movies are streaming. I'll say that right now in case anyone hasn't had a chance to watch any of these before listening, or, and so, like I said, some of these you've probably fucking seen either multiple times or seen relatively recently. But Psycho appears to be streaming on nothing. Doesn't appear to be streaming on anything. Sorry, folks.
Gotta buy it.
But you gotta buy it. But you can rent it. You can rent it through Apple, Amazon, blah, blah, blah. You can buy it. I actually have it through a 4K Hitchcock set, which includes this, I think Vertigo, Rear Window, and The Birds, all remastered in 4K. So,
nice.
So that's pretty nifty too. I think it goes on sale on like Black Friday and Prime Day sales quite frequently. So you can keep an eye out for that if you so choose. My last thought is. I thought since we wouldn't have time to do like a fun fact at the beginning of the episode, it's not really a regular episode. We don't have that sort of thing. I thought I'd throw out a little fun fact for each of these films. So
it's funny.
Some of them concern the production of the film. Some of them concern the different aspects of the film that they'll kind of relate to. But they're ones that I either found humorous or stood out to me in some way. So for this one, my fun fact is that once upon a time, Walt Disney refused to allow Alfred Hitchcock to film anything at Disneyland in the early 1960s because Hitchcock had made, quote unquote, that disgusting movie Psycho. And I think that really illustrates the thinking of the time of how heinous and horrifying this movie was, and now we look at it and we think it's pretty tame.
Poor old man Walt's rolling over in his grave.
Yeah, Walt was not pleased with Psycho, it seems. So,
man,
quite interesting. So yeah, any other thoughts for you on Psycho?
Nah, that's all I got.
Okay, all right. Well, then let's move on to another decade with The Exorcist. I think a big jump up in terms of what you can get away with the film. Although, I think at the same time, it is a film that I think did a lot of things that people were like, "Oh my God, you're allowed to do this!" Like I think it is another film in that.
To this day, this movie still like. So for those that don't know, for listeners, I grew up in a very religious home. Church 3 days a week. I actually watched this movie. I watched this movie on my PSP, my homebrewed PSP.
Classic.
Yep. I
used to do it under sheets and comforter.
I did. Yeah. I LimeWired the movie, and then I watched it on my PSP under the sheets. And I remember when I watched this movie, I felt dirty.
Terror.
And I felt shame, and I felt scared. Like it was truly scary. And to this day, and you talk to people about The Exorcist, and if they're any sort of level like involved in the church, or if depending on how they hold their faith, this movie is, like I talked to Chris, our detailer, about it. I said, man, we watched The Exorcist the other night, and he's like, man, you shouldn't watch that stuff. That's just bringing the devil in your home. I said, dude, I'm watching 7 of them. I'm watching 7 of these movies. The devil's gonna be living in my house. It's for Halloween.
It's an interesting thing, right? Of a woman getting stabbed to death, staying at a motel. All right, that's not great. No one's a fan of that, but it's no one really bats an eye these days anymore. But even to this day, like you're saying, like, playing with religious imagery and the devil and demons and stuff like that, like that skirts the line a little bit.
And I don't know what it is about this particular movie, right? Because you can watch Exorcism of Emily Rose, or you can watch the Conjuring or whatever, right? But there's something about The Exorcist. I don't know if it's the score, if it's the way it's shot. I don't know if it's the fact that it's centered around a seemingly innocent little girl. I don't know what it is about this movie. But this movie's fucked. Like it's
yeah, no, you're not wrong.
It's definitely one of my favorite horror movies, just because of the reaction I get when I watch it. You know what I mean? I still feel the same way when I watch this movie, and I just kind of,
however many years ago, yeah, sure.
Yeah, I feel slack. I mean, I haven't seen it in a while, but I watch it. I'm slack-jawed when I watch it. You know what I mean? I just don't know what to think. The score is incredible. My fun fact for this movie.
Well, before we do that, should I set this up for anyone that doesn't know what The Exorcist is? I'm joking, of course, because people know what it is. But maybe.
Oh shit! I just jumped right in, didn't I? I'm sorry, I got excited.
I'll let you run with it. I didn't want to cut you off too, but then we were like, all right, we're a few minutes in. Maybe I should.
Okay.
It came out December 26, 1973. So we're jumping ahead 13 years. It is a supernatural horror film. Written by William Peter Blatty, directed by William Friedkin, starring Ellen Burstyn, Max von Sydow, Lee J. Cobb, Kitty Wynn, Jack McGowan, Jason Miller, and Linda Blair. It's about a teenage girl that's possessed by a mysterious entity, forcing her mother to seek the help of 2 priests to save her daughter with an exorcism. That's right. So anyway, what were you saying? Hopefully I haven't lost.
No, my fun fact here is that...
oh, yes. Fun fact.
Max von Sydow ceased aging in the 70s. Like he reached as old as he's going to get, like visibly look. He's going to look the same way for the next 40 years. Like we see him in Star Wars Force Awakens.
This is not my fun fact that I had prepared, but it was something I came across while researching my fun fact for this. Apparently they used aging makeup on him in this film to make him look older. And I think it's really convincing because he just looks fucking old as shit, and he does look like basically how he looks when he was an old man, and we've seen him acting, into the era where he was quite a bit older, and it's fucking like he looks like he's fucking 70 in this shit.
That's it. It's like man,
he was like 40 something when he made this, which I think is nuts.
He looks old as fuck, And I'm looking at him. It's like, man, that man up until he died, and I think he died a couple years ago. This man hasn't aged a day since the 70s.
Yeah, he's on that Patrick Stewart thing. As soon as the hair came off, he just ceased aging.
Yeah, so I went on before you went on about the movie, but I think one real cool thing about this film is that the level that the extent that they tried to cure her. The daughter is an actress's kid, right? So. Yeah. She's got the money to try to pursue whatever means she can try to fix her daughter, right?
Yeah, up to and including 40 doctors or whatever.
Yeah, and so every modern possible solution to fix the daughter it fails, and so at that point you turn to the other things, the esoteric old ways, and the priests don't even know what the fuck they're doing except. The ageless Sidao. He comes in from fucking Africa or where the fuck he was at. I think he was in Egypt or something. I don't know. And
I think it was Iraq, if I'm not mistaken.
Was it? You're right. It was Iraq. Yeah. And he comes in, and is it established that it's the same demon? I know you've seen all these movies. This is the only one I've ever seen. Is it the same demon that he sees in Iraq?
I believe that's the idea. I think it's not
it's insinuated
in it, but because it's, I think, the same, I think, because he's like a statue, right? In the beginning, and I think you kind of see it recur throughout the rest of the film.
Yes.
In more subtle ways. I think it's intended to be the same demon that he's coming up against, which is named Pazuzu, which is based off of a real demon. Well, I say quote unquote real demon, but an actual mythical demon from the Mesopotamian religion. So it's got some founding in real religion, basically.
And did he bring it with him?
That I'm not. I mean, that I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I don't know that there's really any clear answer to how the demon travels. I mean, I guess it's possible, right? I mean, we do see the demon literally travel into Karis at the end, but I don't know exactly how it. I don't know if it's really clearly explained or explored how it finds its way to Reagan. I'm not sure if that's.
Well, I mean, I think
it's explored.
It was insinuated that she was using the Ouija board, right? I think that she opened up herself to the.
Perhaps,
but
yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so it's just a terrifying movie. I don't know.
I do agree with you. I mean, it's something about this movie really does. It's just genuinely unsettling, and I don't know if it's just because it feels fucking real. Like, even to this day, like, it's one of those things, like, there's not something in it that makes it feel hokey, right? Something could, like, I mean, just to compare it to Psycho, I guess, like, the shower scene, like, it's not particularly graphic, you can't really see anything. It's kind of just like, okay, I get it, she's getting killed. Here, it really kind of gives you everything in frame, but it does it in a really convincing way.
And she looks like shit throughout the whole movie. Like, she just looks worse and worse.
She get every fucking scene. She is rapidly physically deteriorating. And I will say, to the point where I'm just like, I think you should start looking outside of the doctors earlier, because, ma'am, something fucked is happening here. And I mean, if I saw that shit in real life, I would resort to extreme measures of. We try the exorcism or we kill her with fire. I mean, at this point, I don't know that there's any other appropriate action to take, because something really bad is happening here, and it's not just a mental breakdown or some sort of psychosis. It's fucked.
And that's what she tries to tell everybody. She tries to tell the doctors and everybody, something's fucked. Somebody do something. Come look at her. Just come look at her. And then they go look at her.
Take one look at her. They'll be like, Yes, well, I think that she's having what you call a psychotic break. Yes.
And mom's losing her mind.
Well, yes, the shaking can be explained because
muscle spasms.
It's like, motherfucker, take one look at that girl. Like, just look at her. Just look at her, man.
Man. And I don't know how I missed it. I actually didn't see it this viewing. I was waiting for it, and I don't know how I missed it. Okay, but maybe there
are multiple versions of this, so depends on how you watched it. Might impact.
Okay, because I didn't see her. I didn't see her run down the stairs.
So that was not in the theatrical version. So that's probably what you watched.
Okay, I watched the theatrical version then.
Yeah, how did you watch it? Did you Plex it or?
I Plexed it. Yeah.
Okay, it is streaming on HBO Max, and I assume it's the theatrical one.
I watched it on HBO Max. That's what I watched it.
Then it's the theatrical one. I have the Blu-ray of this, which includes the extended director's cut, which is a actually slightly modified version of the version you've never seen, which they first put out in 2000. And so basically the Reagan descending the stair, like the spider walk scene, I think is kind of as it's known, was originally not included in the theatrical cut because they couldn't find a way to do it and make it look convincing. You know, I think they felt that it broke the illusion, I guess, to some extent, because they couldn't pull it off in the same way that they could pull off everything else. Like, it's all practical, it's done with wire work and stuff like that, but I think they just couldn't find a good, clean way to make it feel real enough.
Right.
And then, as technology advanced, they had a better way to scrub the wires to render it so that it felt a bit more convincing. So they chucked it back. The director chucked it back in for the director's cut, basically. So I did watch the version that had that in it, which it's a pretty fucking spooky scene. It's basically right at the end. In terms of the director's cut, that's really like the big like
that's the big
spooky thing that gets added back in. I think other than that, there are a few more like I think the theatrical cut still has it, where like occasionally like they'll just throw a random frame of like the demon face in there.
Okay.
I don't know. Yeah,
that sounds familiar.
There's more of that in the director's cut. There's like, like you can see like the image of the demon on like the door or something like that, and like the bedroom door at some point. Stuff like that where it's kind of thrown in there a little bit more. I think other than that, it's mostly just extended dialogue, or like the ending is slightly different, not in any sort of narratively hugely significant way. Just I think it's a different the bracelet. I think something different happens with that, if I recall correctly. And then I think there's more stuff with Karras getting haunted by like visions of his mother and stuff like that. So, there's some extra stuff in there. It's about 10 minutes extra worth of stuff, I think. So,
decent chunk.
That's good. Yeah. I before I watched it, because the Blu-ray has both versions, I was like, oh, what should I do? And I've seen both, I'm pretty sure, but I think I usually tend to watch the director's cut of things. And so I looked it up, and basically it's a pretty interesting thing, I think, where, if I'm not mistaken, I think that the director's cut is, I think, closer to what the writer wanted, and the director's cut is the theatrical version. So it's a director's cut, but it's really like the author of the books who wrote the screenplay for this cut. So that, it feels like it's probably closer to what he envisioned his novel being.
I gotcha.
In terms of an adaptation. So I think there's some definite merit for both. I think both versions of the film have the essentials in it, right? Just the absolute fucking horror that is in this. I will say, you said it's one of your favorites. This is my favorite horror film of all time, for me personally.
It's a good one.
I think it's just exceptionally well paced. The build up, is just really interesting and well done. I think even the beginning. The beginning, it has this whole kind of prologue sequence with Father Marin in Iraq, and it's kind of just like, all right, what's the relevance of this? And then Marin comes back in a huge way, obviously, within the film, confronting the demon again and losing his life with it. I think that's all really interesting, and how it all ties together. But obviously, particularly the gradual fucking of Reagan, I guess, so to speak, of she's got an imaginary friend, to she's pissing in front of house guests on the floor, to the whole fucking bed is shaking, to she's got a fucking demon face and she's vomiting pea soup on everyone. You know what I mean? Like the way that it kind of builds all that is just incredible. And there's just the moments that like when she's speaking backwards, you know, like it's just there's just something about that. It's just fucked, man. It's just fucked. It's like the honest truth of it. But like it's scary in a way that seeing someone get stabbed
isn't
or
not isn't, but
yeah.
Right.
It is more unsettling in a sort of way, and I think perhaps it's just a symptom of us being desensitized to certain types of violence these days. Because, you know, you get that, you know, it's a dime a dozen with horror movies of just relentless gore, video games the same way. So you could perhaps offer that as a critique for how desensitized audiences are to certain types of things, and maybe they ought not to be. But this is still kind of this is like a taboo subject still, you know. This goes in with what we were saying. Like it's still so taboo even to this day. Where like this one is really, really in your face about it. You know, like, I mean, even jumping ahead slightly, like Hellraiser obviously deals with demonic entities and stuff like that, but not like this.
Completely different, yeah. Completely
not like this.
Different. And
this
even
is like head on, like
even your newer, like I said, when the whole movie's about exorcisms, right? You got the Exorcist. The only one I can really speak of is Emily Rose. Right. But there's plenty of them. There's tons of these things, but they're not of the same ilk. Maybe it's because they're not practical. Maybe they're not practical. Maybe they're not simple movies. I mean,
I don't know.
I mean, it's a straightforward, simple thing. It's just very well done.
I just think the realness of this has not been recaptured. I think is a lot of it, where it just feels real. I mean, honestly, like, and a lot of that I think is the characterization, and everyone I think feels like very realistic. And you know, Chris, who's her mom, like obviously is panicked and doesn't really know what to do. But I think that even when Reagan / Pazuzu, you know, is face to face with the two priests, like it just feels like I don't know, like forces of nature that should not be seen on film duking it out. Like it just feels like we're not meant to see this, you know, like this is not a thing that should have been filmed. It just has that sort of feel to it of this isn't right. This isn't something that we should be watching. I don't know that I can really put it into words of how I guess it is kind of difficult to pinpoint, like, why is this one the one that just feels like we can't talk about that.
The only thing that I think the only movie that I can think of that is that, and it's unnerving for a host of different reasons, right? I've only seen it once. I don't know if I'll watch it again. Is Antichrist. That one is
yeah, sure.
But you feel in a similar way. You know what I mean when you watch that movie. They're just, I don't know. It's strange. I can't figure it out. I don't know what it is. But definitely a spooky movie for Halloween.
I think I'm someone that I think I am just generally desensitized to a lot of, you know, what is pretty common, what is pretty tropey, and within the horror genre, and in the many subgenres that you know that get lumped in there. But The Exorcist is still something that, even upon repeat viewings, even as you get older, still retains genuine terror to it. I think that's pretty uncommon for a lot of horror films to just have that impact, even when you know what's coming. It's still really impactful. I think that's why it holds up from 1973, and I think it's you know, a similar thing to Psycho of it was pushing boundaries at the time, and that made it revolutionary, obviously for audiences of that time, but it allowed it to be you know, still timely, right? You know, still palatable to modern audiences who can go back and revisit it 50 years on and think, damn, like they did this in 1973. Like that's pretty fucking crazy, right? You know, it hasn't been recaptured, I think, is kind of it. I mean, yeah, you have an exorcism movie here and there, but they can't recapture this magic somehow. They can't do it again. And maybe it's just literally just the case of, well, if we do it too closely, then we're just being a copycat and people have seen it before. But it just, I don't know. I don't know what it is. I know that this movie's really fucking good, I can tell you that, but it's hard for me to articulate, what it is that just sets it apart from everything else. This is just like the purest of horror, I think, in terms of just execution, conception to execution, I think it's just pitch perfect. There's nothing quite like it even to this day. And maybe there never will be anything that has this sort of genuine terror, even for new audiences. Like, not even to speak of people that, watched it at the time and were probably pretty fucking upset.
Oh man, could you imagine? Imagine going to the movies.
Yeah.
Man,
this scarred a lot of people. I would.
They're talking about it in every church across America when it was released.
Yeah.
They did. Like, it's just rattling. It's got to be rattling.
Yeah.
What's his face? Forrest Gump. Tom Hanks makes that one, the fucking treasure hunting movie. What is it? What's it called? It's not National Treasure. It's the one, Angels and Demons or something. Yes, that's it.
Yeah.
He makes that, and all the churches go crazy. What happened with this?
I think there was probably a fucking crisis, and I bet maybe some churches and ordered some investigations of like, did they just film something for realsies here? I don't know. I have to imagine this caused all sorts of conflict and controversy at the time.
And it's the first. It was the first horror film to be nominated for Academy Awards.
Yeah,
it's crazy. It's the highest grossing R-rated horror film until 2017, until the 2017 release of It. So, this is a definite, and this is also inducted into the film registry. Just so we're clear.
Here we go. There's a whole section on Wikipedia that's dedicated to audience reaction. On December 26th, a movie called The Exorcist opened in theaters across the country, and since then, all hell has broken loose. At a sneak preview, audience members screamed and ran out of the theater. Warner's executives, instead of leaving as they usually do without comment, remained in their seats and said, "What in the fuck did we just see?" There's more. Many viewers fainted. Nausea was the most commonly reported reaction. Smell in the bathrooms is awful. People are rushing in and they're missing the toilet seat by inches.
Jesus.
Theaters arranged for ambulances to be on call. Some Catholic viewers experienced spiritual crises as a result of seeing the film. Many priests reported being called to minister to parishioners, some of whom who had lapsed in their faith, distraught by the film. A teenage girl in New Jersey stayed up all night with their parents, saying the rosary with their parents, but still needed to be reassured by a priest before she could sleep. Psychiatrist documented 4 cases of what he called cinematic neurosis triggered by viewing the film. There's another fucking section called religious response. Oh, Christ. Some of the film's content, such as the crucifix scene, which we haven't touched on at all, let Jesus fuck you, involved acts and utterances that were specifically sacrilegious from a Catholic perspective. That is undoubtedly true. Some thought it could encourage the belief in the occult and Satanism. Man. There's a lot in there. Rating controversy. This is the longest Wikipedia article I've ever seen for a fucking film in my life. I mean, it is. Every single section is
litigation. You got litigation
loaded with paragraphs. So yeah, there's a whole viewing restrictions, rating controversy, reception since release, critical and scholarly analysis and commentary, litigation, legacy, sequels and prequels. Don't watch any of them; they're all bad except for 3's fine. what is it about this film, right? You know,
Yeah.
it's fucking nuts, man.
Tour de force.
I think a tour de force is warranted here. I would agree with that. Some other interesting things that stand out for me, I think on watching this is just general scattered thoughts, and I'll talk about my fun fact as well. It's a very grainy film. I enjoyed that. I think that it also almost gives it more of that old school aesthetic, which again I think probably enhances how real things feel, as it doesn't have a sort of modern sheen to it. Exceptionally well directed. There's a scene, this is something else that stands out because it's apparently very realistic. There's a scene where they do like a medical procedure on Reagan, like with like drawing her blood out.
Yeah.
Called
In her
but
neck.
apparently that's in her neck. Apparently it's a very realistic version of that, and it turns out that one of the actors who was in that, I think, was actually a doctor or a nurse or something like that, and it turns out that he killed someone in real life.
What?
So, yeah, I had no idea about that. This isn't even my fun fact, but the person's name is Paul Bateson, and he just played this very, very minor role in this. I think he was a radiographer who was cast in it because the director had seen him do the procedure, actually in real life, you know, from his job. And then he was convicted for killing a journalist. He was implicated in a series of killings, but never proven. So he's kind of somewhat referred to as a serial killer as well. And, you know, there's no definitive proof to suggest that that's actually true.
Jeez, what in the hell? That's crazy.
Well, and I kind of say all that because I think that this is one of those films. I think like the Poltergeist. I think Poltergeist is the one where like a lot of the cast and crew died in like really weird, mysterious ways after they made that film. This is one that's also considered like a cursed fucking film, because of
it's nuts.
Because of just crazy shit that went into the making of it. So, like a fire destroyed the set, killed some crew members. Linda Blair and Ellen Burstyn, who play Reagan and Chris, suffered long-term injuries as a result of making it. I saw something where Linda Blair, who plays Reagan, was basically like they had to keep the set so cold so that they could have visible breath for those scenes, and that so she's like, I can't be cold anymore. Like, you know, she's like gets like triggered by being literally cold just from the experience of making this fucking film. Production took twice as long as scheduled, cost almost 3 times the initial budget. So it was a bit of a cursed production in terms of what it is. So maybe the powers that be were saying, don't do this thing. This is not a thing that should be done. Don't do what should not be done.
You're meddling with powers you don't understand.
Yeah, pretty much. The power of Christ compels you to stop making this film. But my fun fact that I was going to say is that when they were casting this film, there was a struggle. They couldn't hire any major stars. I don't know if that was just difficulty with trying to find people that would accept the source material and play the source material, but they ended up casting a bunch of unknowns, basically. Ellen Burstyn at the time was an unknown. Linda Blair, who was obviously a child actor, was an unknown. And I think most interesting is Jason Miller, who plays Father Karras, had never acted before in his life. Before this film, he was actually a playwright who won a Pulitzer Prize the same year that, and a Tony Award, the same year that this film came out. I thought he was an incredible actor in this film.
Had no idea about that.
Yeah, I mean, I was really impressed and blown away by his performance for someone who obviously knew a thing or two about acting, you know, and was heavily involved with theater and stuff like that. And I'm sure he probably would have, you know, performed on stage, but for a first-time film appearance was just really, really incredible. And, you know, at the time, he would have been, you know, probably, 30 plus years old. So, you know, it's not like he was, you know, an up-and-comer or anything like that. But I just thought that was really, really, really impressive. All these casting choices were vigorously opposed by WB executives who I think they were wrong, as it turns out. So don't listen to the execs is what I say. Sometimes perhaps quite often. They do not know what they're talking about. But that's my fun fact for The Exorcist. And I think we've obviously spent a bit more time with it than we have with Psycho, but it's just an iconic fucking film that it really is just. I mean, it's just unsettling.
It's special.
Man.
It's a special movie.
It's a special film. I think, top to bottom. Just I think a perfect horror film. Maybe it's not a perfect film, but I think it's a perfect horror film. I think it's
for sure. Yeah.
I think it still works to this date. I think that's a true testament to the filmmaking prowess, I think, behind it. And it may have been cursed production, but the end result was
made in the
really
70s.
Special to behold. Released in 1973. I mean, quite literally nearly 50 years ago. That's really wild to think about.
It's incredible. I mean, it just speaks volumes about how like as horror aside, I mean, just as a especially something in like the visual medium, for a movie to be as impactful as it is in 2022 still I mean, speaks volumes about the quality of the movie it is. It's truly a really good movie.
Definitely.
So that's it. That's all I got.
So that's it on The Exorcist, and that brings us to the 1980s. New wave, and what else is going on in the 80s?
We got some different music for sure.
Music changes a bit, right?
No more piano, I don't think. It's
no more piano. We got some synths, baby. It's time for Nightmare on Elm Street, which came out November 9th, 1984. A supernatural slasher. I think our only true slasher representative of the bunch for this episode. Written and directed by Wes Craven. Stars John Saxon, Roni Blakely, Heather Langenkamp, Amanda Wyss, Nick Corey, introducing Johnny Depp and Robert Englund. Teenager Nancy Thompson and her friends become targets of the spirit of a serial killer with a bladed glove. It's Freddy Krueger. In their dreams, in which if they die, it kills them in real life. It's a Nightmare on Elm Street. It's a quintessential slasher film.
Yeah.
So let's talk about it.
All right. A Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yes.
I don't think I'd ever seen this movie before.
Really? It's fascinating.
I watched the like the remake or whatever, but
okay, sure. Let's clarify again for the record. This is the 1984 one.
That's right.
That we did.
I don't think I'd ever seen this one. So I'd like to point out that this is the third film, potentially final film, that has been inducted into the Library of Congress as being a very important fucking movie.
Well, it's somewhat unfair to the more recent ones because they haven't had the advantage of time. But
that's true.
I'm not sure that, and this is not an indictment of the quality of any of those films. I'm not sure that they're going to have the sort of cultural relevance or significance that certainly Psycho, Exorcist, and Nightmare on Elm Street have had. That's we're starting off with a nice 1, 2, 3
with some bangers.
It's a I don't know, jab, right hook, uppercut kind of combo. I don't know, some order, some different order. That Exorcist is probably the uppercut, but.
So did this did Nightmare on Elm Street come out before or after Friday the 13th?
Well, good question, because this is a slasher genre, and there's a lot of these that are, I think, really kind of in the same vein as each other, right?
Yeah.
So Friday the 13th came out in 1980, so it preceded Nightmare by quite a few years, actually.
Wow.
Obviously,
okay.
Halloween was late 70s. And I think that, I don't know. I mean, they're all slashers.
They're all, for sure.
But
definitely.
they all, I think, do have sort of, I think at least for their first films in the franchises, I think that they have some individuality from each other. I feel like it's the later, as they all became franchised, they kind of turned into either like schlocky or just really about like what's the most like creative kill that we can have, and like it's a bunch of teenagers fucking, and like
that's
it's a little bit of that here too, and obviously there's a bit of that in like Friday the 13th too. But there's more depth to it than just that. I think with this one particularly.
Well, there is, yeah. I mean, it touches on like the quote unquote sins of your fathers. You know what I mean? It deals with that. But I mean, a through line with a slasher movie, I mean, we see it in Psycho and we see it here, is there's a through line of sexuality, right? It's an ever present thing in the slasher genre. So I mean, if they all come from Psycho, then like I said, you got your sexuality in there, and
promiscuity gets punished oftentimes in the slasher genre.
Every time.
You fucking, you dead.
That's it. It's a good. It's why they're frequented by teenagers. The parents let them go see these things and say, "Hey, listen, don't you go fucking around and get Freddy on you," you know. But the really cool thing about this movie is just the premise. I think the premise is really.
I fully agree. I think it's
original.
Perhaps probably next to The Exorcist. It's like the scariest fucking thing, right? Like The Exorcist is scary because you're getting possessed by a fucking demon, and what the hell are you gonna do? You know,
yeah.
Like, that's terrifying.
You can't fucking sleep, dude.
Losing control of your body is obviously scary. This is literally like, yeah, you can't fucking sleep or you're gonna die.
Yeah,
like,
and as somebody
asleep,
that
you die.
Somebody that really likes to fucking sleep. That's a that's a
can
real
you imagine
problem.
having to live without sleeping. I mean, quite literally, it's not humanly possible. I mean that you can stretch the limits of not sleeping, but like it's a physiological need, quite literally.
Yeah, you can't shut it off.
And
yeah,
if you don't sleep, you look like Christian Bale in The Machinist. You know, like that's what happens to you. That's bad. You don't want to do that.
I think the main character of this movie goes, like 3 or 4 days without sleeping, and she's got like a coffee pot hidden in her nightstand, and she's just chugging coffee.
I loved those aspects of just being like, I ain't fucking sleeping. There was like the one moment where, like, I think prior to the coffee pot reveal, where she's like, "Good night, Mom." That she just bolts, fucking yanks the coffee pot hidden in her like fucking bedroom nightstand. I'm like, this is incredible. This is incredible stuff.
Yeah. It didn't even brew. Like, she just had it on. Like, it was just full of fucking coffee.
Shit.
Yeah.
She's just chugging it, man. Caffeine out the wazoo, man.
And Johnny Depp's a bitch. He can't stay awake he can't stay awake to midnight.
All he does is fall asleep. Johnny, don't fall asleep. Okay, I won't. You have to watch me this entire time. Okay, I will. 5 minutes later.
Then he gets sucked into his bed.
Dude's fucking knocked the fuck out.
Oh, man.
Someone slipped that man some Ambien, I guess. I don't know what happened.
I think that the premise is terrifying.
The premise. I love the premise. I mean, you can't fall asleep. You're getting hunted by this fucking, burned.
He's got his
lunatic.
slinky arms. His arms are all fucking long.
Sometimes he's got his fucking, his glove, his dagger glove. And he's a fucking troll, man. And I think it's more prevalent in the sequels. But even in this one, he's got some like zingers, right? He's like, "I'm your boyfriend, Nancy," that sort of thing. It fucking turns the phone into a mouth with a tongue, and he starts licking her like. It's. I just literally licked my mic as I did that.
I forgot about that. It's hilarious. And I think that's. We're gonna talk about another movie. But it's. I think that the charm of this film, how it can toe the line of like a scary thing, at the same time it can also be like it doesn't take itself too serious. I think it's very unique to the genre, and it's since been, or it was very unique to the genre. I think since then it's been, it's been recreated, time and time again. But I think that, I don't know about movies before this, but a horror I guess horror comedies have always been a thing, right? You had the Frankenstein, the black and white Frankenstein movie where they're comedies. Son of Dracula, or not Son of Dracula, it's like Son of Frankenstein or whatever.
Right, yeah.
But at the same time, those aren't like supposed to be horror films. Those are supposed to be,
it's they're not really horror films. They're just, playing with, I guess, horror literary characters, but
right,
not adapting it as a straight horror.
No,
type of genre, really.
You watch this, and I think it's kind of clear to see where something like Cabin in the Woods draws inspiration from it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Sure. I think it's definitely a culturally changing film. Like, it just, changes the way people make movies and changes the way they think. And I thought it was. I think that this movie, it's not the scariest. Exorcist was far more scary.
Yes. Yeah, sure.
But I thought that the premise was scary, but I think it was wildly entertaining. I think it was a very fun film.
I think so too. I think it stands out because if you really think about the premise, then it's like, oh yeah, like that's a fucking nightmare. Quite literally,
Yeah.
I guess.
Sarah hated this film, by the way.
All right, fair. Anna did not watch it. She did not watch most of these. She watched Psycho. She had seen it before, and she watched Dracula. We'll get there shortly. Yeah, I think it is. It's just it's really entertaining. Like, the teenagers are annoying teenagers, and Nancy is the only one, because she's chaste or whatever. So she's got a good head on her shoulders. She ain't fucking. She says, Johnny Depp, no, not right now, not doing that right now. And Johnny Depp's like, well, then I sleep.
You'll never get this. You'll never get this.
And then he never got that. But yeah, I think it's. The slasher genre is, I think, a lot of it is entertainment value. I mean, even in the 1960 to 1984, you can see the evolution of even some, like, you could say Psycho is perhaps the beginning of the slasher genre, in the sense that you have a couple scenes of someone getting stabbed to death, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's not overly graphically depicted in that movie or anything like that. But then come to Nightmare on Elm Street, where it's about, like, again, I guess in some ways it is about the creativity of, like, how do you do this? Is it someone just getting stabbed off screen and someone screaming, or is it someone getting sucked into a bed and then becoming a geyser of blood? Like, that's
right.
Haven't seen that one before. That's a bit different, or
the sensibilities also changed too, right? Because now, a lot of it's still practical, like the face coming through the wall. I thought that was fucking awesome.
Yeah,
that was
good.
so
Good
cool.
stuff. And that's the, I think part of what makes these older films here, I think, more charming is their reliance on practical effects out of literal necessity, right?
Yeah.
If you want to do this in a way that feels unsettling, you have to do it practically. You have to do it for real. You have to figure out some way to make this thing that shouldn't be allowed to happen in real life actually happen. So how do you do that? You do it practically. And so you have the stuff like the coming through the wall thing, where it's someone,
but the lighting in that shot,
through a wall, like, it's fucking, it's cool. And it's unsettling. It's a little scary too, but it's like, that's a well done effect. It's really good.
And I think there's a lot to be, and I think we're starting to see a resurgence in this. I think we talked about it on the Ink the Film podcast, where you reach the pinnacle of what you can do with a computer, and you're like, okay, so this is how we can do these things with computers, and that's great. But we can also do it practically, and practically it's going to look better. It's going to be less expensive, and it's going to be more rewarding. You know what I mean? So I think we're seeing a resurgence of practical effects. I mean, case in point's The Volume. You know what I mean? Where it's all not green. You have a lot of practical in there, followed by, giant computer screens. So it's like, it's cool. It's cool.
Yeah,
practical effects are cool.
Yeah, and obviously certain filmmakers these days, Christopher Nolan and such, like, they make a concerted effort for, like, let's do things practically if we can.
Yeah.
And like, obviously we're talking about, like, let's do things practically with $250 million versus, something of this where it's a budget of $1 million, and you really have to, spread yourself thin and do, figure out, like, how can I accomplish this with this amount of money? Okay, so $1 million in the 1980s is probably a little bit more than $1 million now, but not by much, in terms of filmmaking. Like, you're still talking about, using you're talking about, like, creativity being, like, the driving force of how you do these things. Yeah. And I think that's really fascinating, of how you can pull some of this stuff off. It's just the literal production and engineering of how you do it all. I think that's really cool. How they I mean, even like the well, I mean, I don't know how they fucking did it. Even the whole scene of Tina being pulled up in the air and like slashed in air and like getting killed. Like I don't actually really know how they would have practically done that. No, I'm not saying that like they just made her levitate and killed her in real life. Like obviously there's a way that they did it, but I don't know. I'm not even sure like what the easiest way would be to practically make that scene happen. You know, like if I'm trying to conceive of like, all right, so she gets levitated in the air and then slashes start appearing on her. I'm like, yeah. I don't know how you do that. I don't, you know, and I think that's, you know, kind of a credit to the ingenuity of making this film, is doing that in a way where it's just like, this is convincing. It looks convincing, first of all. You know, it doesn't look like a cheap, you know, effect that they're doing, or it doesn't look like a computer made it, and it's very obviously a computer that made it. It's convincing, and I don't know exactly how they did it. That's a good effect yet again, you know, like that's the testament to how practical effects can be really, really convincing and you know,
effective,
and make a movie and effective. Yes. Yeah. It's cool stuff. It's a very entertaining movie. We sort of joked a little bit. Obviously sensibilities of the score changed, but I liked the score in this one. I liked the very synth driven score. I thought it makes it stand apart, obviously, from the other two films that we've talked about. Makes it feel very 80s, obviously, too. But I still think it still managed to accent the film, you know, and give it, you know, extra little punchiness of horror when it needed it, and you know, otherwise it just builds the atmosphere of it, I think, in a way. So
it's an atmospheric score for sure. Yeah, no, I think the whole film as a whole was, I think it's a well-made film. Wes Craven's an effective filmmaker for sure.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it was I enjoyed watching it. Like I said, I don't think I've ever seen it. Once I actually got in there, I was like, I don't remember it. If I did see it, I certainly don't remember it. But I remember the remakes. Anyways,
well, you know, so I mean, Nightmare on Elm Street, just as a brief sidebar, talking about the franchise, there's really not that many sequels. I think there's only 3 or 4 actual sequels, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, it looks like there's 5 mainline ones, and then they did Wes Craven's New Nightmare, and then Freddy vs. Jason, and then the what's the Nightmare, the remake, the 2010 one. The sequels are obviously worse than this, and I think part of the problem is Freddy Krueger becomes increasingly more ridiculous and like jokey, I think, as like a character. Like there's shades of that in this, but you know, even if you haven't seen the film, you might have seen the clips of him like with the fucking power glove in one of those movies.
No, I'm playing with power.
Yeah, like, you know, it's just spouting one-liners, and like obviously he's still killing teenagers and whatnot, so it's not like a complete joke, but it does lose, I think, the horror-y aspects that this one I think still embraces. Yes, it's a slasher, and yes, people are, you know, yes, blood is flowing and flying everywhere and such, but it is still genuinely terrifying in some ways. Maybe it's not The Exorcist in terms of terror, but I think it still has those aspects prevalent in it. The sequel's not as much. Obviously, like, you know, Freddy versus Jason is like, I mean, it's exactly what it suggests it would be. But the 2010 one, I think, tried to...
It took away a lot of that flair, like a lot of the.
Tried to, yeah. I don't know. It tried to be. Like, I think it tried to go back to the horror roots and like develop, you know, Freddy into a more scary character, and they made him a child molester, you know, and you know his appearance is more like closer to like what an actual burn victim looked like. They tried to make it like more unsettling and terrifying. But it lost something in the translation, right? Like it wasn't really successful. Like they tried to do all these things of making it a straight horror film, and then in the result, it lost everything that was like unique about Nightmare on Elm Street and just turned it into every other horror film ever made.
That's right.
Kind of what it seemed like. So anyway,
it didn't toe the line that the first one towed. You know what I mean? It just...
exactly. It just couldn't. Maybe it wasn't trying to be exactly the same thing, but it still wasn't successful at what it did. Whereas the 1984 one, it does, like you said, it toes the line. It's scary while also being entertaining. You know, it's kind of I think it's probably one of the best slasher films. You know, it's to be distinguished from The Exorcist. Like, yeah, they're both horror films, but they're still pretty fucking far apart on the spectrum, right? You know, and both are still kind of top of their game at the same time. You know, like, yeah, The Exorcist is obviously a scarier film, but they're both still really good. You know, so yeah. I enjoyed my time with A Nightmare on Elm Street. It's pretty short too, I think, to its benefit, about an hour and a half. Pretty breezy runtime, and
yes,
doesn't overstay its welcome. I think that's always good. Has a brief Evil Dead cameo on a TV at one point, if you noticed that, which was quite fun.
Did I notice that?
I think it's Nancy that's watching it on their little TV in her room.
Yeah, I remember it. Yep.
Yeah, that's pretty good. And I was going to say, which is kind of funny, a couple of notes that I took on it, which we literally talked about right off the bat, as I made a note about Nancy's hidden coffee pot, and then I also immediately after that put a note that said, "Glenn always be falling asleep." So I'd like to note that we had some similar reactions to those particular things. And the last thing that I'll say, I think, kind of tie into to one of the bigger, like, overarching things that we've talked about with the film itself, is like the concept, right? At the core, the concept is still pretty fucking terrifying, right? Like,
yeah,
you can't fall asleep or you're gonna die. And apparently Wes Craven basically said the inspiration was from what he had read about in the 1970s from some newspaper articles, which were refugees who had fled to the United States because of war and genocide in Laos, Cambodia, and Vietnam. They basically, these people that had, you know, escaped these horrors of their countries came to the U.S., but they couldn't sleep. They had disturbing nightmares, and so like they would not sleep, basically, because if they slept, then they would have to relive these nightmares.
Oh man!
And so some of them literally died in their sleep. Just even when they did fall asleep, they still actually ended up dying from it. The phenomenon was called the Asian Death Syndrome. It affected men between 19 and 57. I mean, just that's insane, right?
I've never heard of that before.
Yeah, I hadn't either, which that's why it stuck out to me. It's really interesting that, you know, something like that could be so mentally affecting that, you know, you could literally die in your sleep just as a result of like emotional trauma like that. I mean, I think it's exceedingly rare, but you know, but it yeah, I mean,
yeah, sudden cardiac death. They just stop. Their heart just stops beating.
Yeah,
man.
I mean, I guess in some ways, like literally scared to death from what you're experiencing in your sleep, right? Like that's
Jesus,
roughly equivalent to that. Like, so yeah, I mean, it's kind of put into a literal form here, where you're literally just getting killed in your dreams, and then that you know, the effect transcends to real life. But yeah, I mean, that's a pretty horrifying thing to think about. So, you know, it makes sense why that would inspire Wes Craven to you know, turn it into A Nightmare on Elm Street as we now know it. So
crazy.
Anyway. And props to Robert Englund for being a great Freddy Krueger, I will say. He deserves credit for
He's definitely better than that 2010 one, for sure.
Yeah. All right. Any other thoughts on A Nightmare on Elm Street?
That's all I got.
To the 90s we go. To November 13th of 1992.
To the 90s, sir. Fucking. We'll talk about it.
For Bram Stoker's Dracula, a gothic horror film. Written by James V. Hart, directed by Francis Ford Coppola, stars Gary Oldman, Winona Ryder, Anthony Hopkins, and most excellent Keanu Reeves. I sold the bastard land and Cuffix Abbey. The centuries-old vampire Count Dracula comes to England to seduce his barrister Jonathan Harker's fiancée, Mina Murray, and inflict havoc in the foreign land. All right.
Oh, holy
so I think
shit.
it's probably worth noting, regardless of your feelings on this film, we have certainly left the culturally significant realm, right? This is not a film that is renowned the world over or anything like that. I think it gets pretty good marks overall. It won some Academy Awards, I think, particularly for makeup, costume design, that sort of thing, sound effects or something like that. But we're this is a different beast.
We're getting into uncharted territory here. It's getting wild.
Uncharted territory, certainly. So, had you seen this one before?
Yes.
Okay. And how recent had that viewing been, would you say?
I don't know. Maybe 5 or 6 years, maybe.
Okay. Because I feel like I saw this when I was probably a kid, because I remembered imagery in it, and then watching this film.
Boobhead? Do you remember Boobhead?
I remember Boobhead. Well, there's also literal Boobhead from Little Nicky, but but
I think that was inspired by this film.
yeah,
I think.
the fucking Gary Oldman hairline. What are they doing to that man? It's just fucking rude. I don't, even if even when he's young, he still has the fucking hairline.
What are you doing? Why?
Why? Just why? We just wanted to see if we could artificially lengthen.
We're just fucking with Gary.
Forehead. Yeah, fucking with Gary. I don't really like Gary that much. I'm gonna fuck with him, make him look ridiculous in this film. No.
Fucking with Gary.
I don't even remember what I was saying, but it's different, right? It's a step into something different. I mean, certainly genre-wise, it's different. It's a classic story from the Bram Stoker novel. Brought to film. Oh, right. I was asking you when you had watched it recently, which reminds me of what I was trying to say, I guess, when you started talking about old Boobhead, which is to say that it was basically an all-new experience for me in many ways, because I really didn't remember a lot of it other than, knowing the general thrust of the Dracula narrative as it's been told many times. But this watching this film was like, I didn't really remember most of this shit. I'm not going to lie. So now my memory has been refreshed. I know lots of things about Dracula that I can talk about, but I am curious. You've seen it multiple times within roughly the last decade or so. I mean, are you a fan of this film? What do you think about it?
So the first time I watched this film, I say that I watched it 5 or 6 years ago, but I had a few beers. I was slightly inebriated, and I didn't.
Okay.
I'm not quite sure if I finished the movie. I can't remember. But I definitely watched it. Stone sober this time, and I think that this film has good qualities. I think that it suffers from this is kind of like what we were talking about earlier about, hey, we have this technology available, let's leverage it, let's use it because it's kind of cool and exciting and fun, and not in the best of ways. Like they use the and it makes you question if it's like a story thing or if it's just them doing exactly that, like trying to leverage something that might look cool. If it's a story thing, I don't get it. But like Dracula's constantly seen like in the clouds.
Right.
And
yeah, he's like transposed into other images and stuff like that. Which,
yeah,
I was saying, like The Exorcist does it here and there in subtle ways. This is not very subtle.
This is not subtle. It's not subtle at all. So, like, he's talking to at one point he's talking to Winona Ryder's character, and like she can see the village and stuff. Is that Dracula doing Dracula like powers? Is it like mind control kind of thing? Or is she actually seeing it? Who's to say? I don't know. Right? You don't know. You don't know because they want to fucking transpose everything. It's like I guess it's Dracula powers, right? Because he's
I mean, they basically explain that Dracula's powers are he doesn't obey the laws of physics and he can do whatever the fuck he goddamn pleases.
That's right.
Unless you stab him and cut through the heart with a stake and cut his head off. Otherwise, he's
That's very clear. Cut his head off.
Cut that motherfucker's head off.
And then you have Anthony Hopkins just chopping everybody's fucking head off. That's all he wants to do.
You wish to perform an autopsy on her? No. I wish to remove her heart and cut her head off. He's getting fucked up by those 3 vampires, Dracula's brides. Yeah. Fucking
chops their heads off.
Brings their heads out, throws them. Fuck that shit.
Anthony Hopkins.
These ladies.
It's too much. It's too much.
He's having a bit of fun in this one.
I did think that this movie was wildly entertaining. I just don't know if I found it wildly entertaining for the right reasons. You have Keanu Reeves, who...
Whoa, dude, I'm in, like, Transylvania, man.
That's pretty much what it is. Like,
hold on. No, that's not quite right. Whoa, I'm in Transylvania, dude.
That's better. It's good. My dearest Evelyn, I have to go for 1 month. It's just like, I don't know. What do you? And then when he comes back to the UK, like Winona Ryder's character fell from the castle, died, dead.
Yeah,
he falls from the castle after being drained for blood for like a month. Like, I can't escape. This is my last attempt. And so he tries to escape and he fucking falls off the side of the castle. And he somehow makes it. Yeah, he somehow makes it to the,
Yeah, maybe he fell from a lower point, whereas
maybe
Elisabetta jumped from the tower or something like that.
And his hair is fucking like gray.
Yeah,
like he's.
It's looked like they just chucked baby powder in it and called it a day.
Man, shit must have
baby
been
powdered a wig and called it a day. Slapped it on Keanu's head. It's like, whoa, I am old now.
What are you doing? I don't know what their direction was with hair and makeup in this movie, but it was what it was. It was good.
I think hair and makeup, perhaps Jonathan Harker aside, is really, really incredible. Hairline is questionable, certainly in terms of what they've done to Gary Oldman, but I think that the makeup effects I think are really actually quite well done. I think overall, I think it also to I think somewhat your point earlier, which was mostly just about like Dracula appearing in the sky and shit. It does kind of feel like every scene is like, let's try some different makeup on Gary Oldman and see what happens. Like
Gary
it's like
Oldman
every
sucks
fucking
it all
scene.
up.
It's like they're like, all right, he's he's an old guy, with ridiculous hair and the big fucking flowing red cape and shit. Like, all right, that's fucking cool, man. That's pretty neat. And then he's young, and then he's got a ridiculous hairline, or he's got the big fucking red armor in the beginning, or he's
shouting.
He's just big shouting in the beginning, or whatever his other incarnations are, where he's like an actual like fucking bat, like man bat kind of thing at one point. But then he's also a werewolf at some point. It's
like, I had to look that up.
What's going on?
I had to look that up.
He's a werewolf. That's a werewolf. That's fucking a couple times.
A couple times. I had to look it up though. It's like, did something else come over on the boat with him? Like, was it a werewolf? Or
why does he look like this? Yeah,
because that's supposed to be a werewolf.
I did look this up as well because I was a little confused. I'm like, why is Dracula a werewolf?
Did I miss something? Anyways, it's just
it's just they had the makeups. The team ready to put a werewolf on screen, and they said, you know what, Dracula can do whatever he wants. Say it again with me. Unless you put a stake through his heart and cut his head off, he can be whatever he wants to be. He can be rats. He can be lots of rats. He can be some sort
of
fog. Wasn't he a little
fog
wolf at one point? He was fog. He can be green fog. Green.
Yeah, that's
smoke.
Right. He can be the fucking storm. He can be young. He can be old. Really fucking old. Like white. Like. Yeah. Super fucking old.
Whatever the fuck he wants, basically.
I think Dracula's a really cool character.
Yeah.
I read the book. I like the book. It's, I don't know. Dracula's really cool. That's all I got. This movie is not like
I think. Let me just take a quick look at the list.
You got the people they got the guy from Texas, the redhead who becomes like a bride of Dracula.
Yeah.
And
it's a weird fucking film. I think
it's a little weird. Yeah.
And I think, like.
But it's not art housey enough to be straight up art house. It's
I'm thinking is this the weirdest film? Like The Endless and Hellraiser, like those are weird films too. Don't get me wrong, but this is weird in terms of just like, what the hell is going on here? Like those films have a thrust to them, and this one obviously does to a certain extent, but it's just so fucking all over the place in terms of like where it goes with everything. And
the fact that it was even like brought up in I'm not going to say that the makeup and everything's not incredible, because it is.
Yeah.
But the fact that it got recognition at the Academy Awards for being this kind of movie is kind of crazy. It must be the director and the actors and stuff that are behind it, right? Like, cause
I think it's like a sort of prestige, form of Dracula with a really talented cast. I think overall,
it's just weird.
Keanu is. It's not that he's like really, really bad in this film. It's just that the man just cannot do an English accent to save his life. Just either cast someone else or just let him do his own thing. Like this kind of, because it's just fucking ridiculous listening to the man. Like, I don't know how you get around it. But like and I think it just feels like a hodgepodge of like different elements. Like I think
that's
the
true.
film itself is somewhat tonally inconsistent and just feels, I don't know, I think like the beginning stuff in Transylvania is actually quite well done. The interactions between Dracula and Jonathan, I think, are really interesting, and I think that there's some like really interesting sets and
you see him crawling along the wall and stuff. That was cool.
Yeah, like the use of shadows, like just being completely different from like how anyone actually moves was that's a really interesting thing. Where I'm like, that's fucking cool. I'm like, also, I wonder how they did that. In a way that. How they achieved that. Like, that's a cool effect and like a cool like little narrative thing of like, okay, there's something off about this guy that I know is 400 years old. He's got something going on. But then
he goes to the UK,
once it gets past that. Yeah, I think once it gets to London, it just goes off the rails, I think, a bit too much here and there. Like, I just don't think it really knows exactly what it's trying to be. Like, obviously, it's an adaptation of the Dracula novel, but it adds a lot of horniness into it that I didn't know needed to be there. So I referenced the horniness earlier a little bit. I think this is definitely the horniest film of the 7 that we're talking about. And
Redhead's all about it.
She's quite horny, and I think that Mina's quite horny at a certain point too. And it's just like
she hasn't seen her husband in a long time. She's a little bit more understated. I
don't know.
Like
and then it's one of those things where like they basically crafted this love story between Dracula and Mina, and I don't know. It just doesn't really totally work, right?
She just wants to
it's a little unconvincing.
Lick his belly and
and like Dracula's like licking Keanu's titties at one point or something like that, like looking some blood off him. Like it's a horny film. I mean, it is. It's a very erotic film.
No,
okay?
Mina, I cannot do this. I cannot do this thing. And she's like, no, I want it. And she's like looking at his like wound. He's like, oh, yeah. No, I don't know.
I
okay.
How old and decrepit and how closely you resemble Emperor Palpatine at this current moment in time. It really gets me going.
That's how Emperor Palpatine fucks. That's how we did it. That's true. It. We always question, how does he have these kids? We don't know how he has these kids.
What's Grandpappy Sheev up to? This is what it looks like.
This is how it happened.
Yeah.
Oh, fuck.
Yeah, it's a bit of a bummer, I will say, because when we talk about doing a 90s representative, we contemplated Silence of the Lambs, and I think we will talk about that at some point in the lifetime of this podcast. But I thought this would be a good one because it's like a gothic horror, which I know is very different from anything else. And I recalled liking this film and thinking like, oh, this is like, I'm like, that's a fucking cool, stylish, moody 90s film. And like, I guess it is in some ways, but
There's probably better kids.
I didn't love it. Yeah, it's not. It's got some really impressive stuff in it, and like, you know, in terms of the makeup and effects and stuff like that. And I think Gary Oldman's really quite good, actually. I think he's very good in this.
I can't think of. I'll be honest with you. I can't think of a movie that I don't like Gary Oldman in.
I mean, that's true too.
I think Gary Oldman's probably one of my favorite actors.
He's a great actor, yeah, absolutely. And I think he's incredible here and embracing every 19 different forms of Dracula. He's really good at all that. Like it's awesome. But the film itself is just, I don't know if it's just doing too much. You know, there's like 9 sequences of like someone narrating a letter or something like that. It's like, okay. I don't know if it's just too much. Maybe it's overstuffed. I don't really know, or it's a little rudderless in terms of like, well, where the fuck is any of this going? Like, I don't know.
Like the book, I think the book's largely told through like the series of letters and stuff.
Yeah, so I think it's So yeah, you know, maybe it's just taking the written form and trying to translate that,
make it too literal,
retaining, you know, the literal, you know, the literary aspects of it. But some things work on the page that don't work on the screen. I think that
we don't need the letters.
Maybe do too much. I think maybe
we don't need the letters at all.
Yeah, you know, and to make a comparison to something that does have like almost a similar kind of narrative device, Psycho has a lot of scenes of people just driving, and then you hear exposition play across them, and I thought that was really effective of just like giving
this person's driving and thinking
without having to actually show 20 minutes worth of scenes that would capture that. That was, I thought, really creative and like a good like time-saving device. Here it's like, feels like someone's reading a letter to me. I mean, they are, quite literally, but it also is just like, all right, well, I can read this letter in 5 seconds. I don't need to hear someone narrate it for a minute and a half. Like, it just doesn't have the same sort of impact on it. You know, narration, I think, can work, but it's a tough thing to do. I don't know. It just kind of felt like it slowed the film down. And, you know, and that's not even, we haven't even touched on the asylum. Like that's some Tim Burton shit right there, right? You know, it's just a lot. It's too much. I think it's too much packed into one.
The fucking asylum. Why are those people's heads in cages?
I don't know.
Did they do that over there at that time?
I don't know. They might have. I don't know. It's possible.
Maybe it's a book thing too. I can't remember. I just don't remember people being in fucking cages. Their heads are in cages. Anyway, I don't know. Well, yeah, that's that.
Yeah. Anyway, I found myself a little disappointed with this. I will say.
Did you laugh? You laughed. Surely you laughed a little bit, didn't you?
I mean, I enjoyed it. I found it largely entertaining, but I just didn't find it to be like Nightmare on Elm Street. I found entertaining, but also like a really well made and interesting film to watch. This one was interesting to watch, but not, like you said, for all the right reasons. You know, it's. I don't know.
Right? It's a little weird.
it's a little weird. It's a little out there, and I don't think that that's what holds it back. I think it just is not.
I
just think the way that it's. I don't know if it's a '90s thing or you know, maybe this is it's. Anna actually compared it to a Baz Luhrmann film in ways, and I agree with that. Where it's so a Baz Luhrmann. He did Moulin Rouge, Romeo plus Juliet, and Elvis most recently. He's got like a very chaotic, frenetic filmmaking style, and this felt like that. And I find that can be overwhelming and kind of undermine, I think, a narrative value of like there's something to be said for subtlety. And I think that like
sometimes less is more. Most of the time, less is more.
Most of the time, less is more. I think that's an apt way of putting it, and I think that would have been true here. It just didn't need as much as what actually went into it, and I think that holds it back overall. But anyway, all right. I think that's all I have on Bram Stoker. Bram Stoker. Have you ever heard of this man, Bram Stoker? That's all I have on Bram Stoker's Dracula. That's the man I'm trying to refer to.
Which we will. No, I would like to say real quick before we depart.
Okay.
It's in talks. Yeah. I think we talked about it. We've got announcement that my Northman boy, what's his name? Robert Eggers. Going to be directing the Nosferatu. Nosferatu was referenced multiple times in Bram Stoker's Dracula by one Anthony Hopkins. Little fun fact for you guys.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yep. So,
right,
anyways.
Well, speaking of fun facts, I remembered that I had not offered mine for Bram Stoker's Dracula. So before we do indeed move on, let me just tell you a little fun fact, courtesy of a director commentary from Francis Ford Coppola, who said that at Mina and Harker's wedding, so the wedding of Winona Ryder and Keanu Reeves, that was all done as part of a reshoot at a Los Angeles Greek Orthodox church in which they filmed the entire ceremony with a genuine Romanian Orthodox minister, and realized afterwards that Winona Ryder and Keanu Reeves may have really been married to each other, not legally, but quote-unquote under the eyes of God. And so Keanu has since come out and said that he sometimes gets texts from Winona Ryder that start with "Hello, husband," and that they're both fine with it. So I think that's incredible. Personally, I think that's quite funny, actually.
No, that's what cool people, you know?
Yeah, I do know. Fucking Keanu, man. He's the best. He's the best. Unless you make him do an English accent, then he's definitely not the best. He's not the best. He's not most excellent at that point. But when you let him be most excellent within his limited range of being most excellent, he is indeed most excellent. So anyway, are you ready to move on to the next one?
Let's do it. What do we got?
All right. Turn of the century will bring us Shaun of the Dead, April 9th, 2004. A very, very different film than the ones that we've covered thus far. A comedy horror. Lightening the mood a little bit, right? You know, we've had some dark, and out there and weird shit. And this is not exactly that. It's different. And that's okay. It's written by Simon Pegg and Edgar Wright, directed by Edgar Wright, stars Simon Pegg, Kate Ashfield, Lucy Davis, Nick Frost, Dylan Moran, Bill Nighy, and Penelope Wilton. It's about the uneventful, aimless lives of a London electronics salesman and his layabout roommate, which are disrupted by the zombie apocalypse.
Like that layabout.
almost feels kind of
very English.
Right? It's a bit of a layabout roommate. Am I better than Keanu or not? You decide.
Yes,
Listeners
yes.
can decide. I'll try to stop myself from doing it again because I just spent however long talking about shitty British accents. I probably shouldn't add to the pile. But yeah, Shaun of the Dead. It's different for sure than the four we've covered thus far. I
love this movie.
I for one think it's fucking hilarious. I think this is a fucking hilarious film. Great fun.
It's got to be it's the first introduction to Edgar Wright, right?
That's a good question. 2004.
I feel like regardless of, I think it's the first introduction I had to him.
Yeah, I think that, yes, I would say that's almost certainly true. It's probably our personal first introduction to him. Let me do a quick look.
It's the first of Hot Fuzz.
Right, Hot Fuzz, and then The World's End was like the Three Flavors Cornetto trilogy or whatever the kind of name was for the three of them together. Looks like he did like TV stuff for a little bit. He did a feature film called A Fistful of Fingers in 1995, so almost 10 years prior to this.
Is it also a spoof on something?
Yeah. Yes. I guess. Yeah. It seems like it's a British Western.
Fistful
comedy.
of dollars. Yeah. Fistful of dollars. Okay.
Yeah. Exactly. So I think that was like a no budget, probably like almost like a student film kind of thing. It seems like because it's almost 10 years before he does this, which is quite a step up. So yeah, Shaun of the Dead is really like the first mainstream film that he did, and then it was followed by Hot Fuzz, Scott Pilgrim, World's End, Baby Driver. Last Night in Soho. So
still haven't seen Last Night in Soho. I need to watch that.
Yeah, it's worth a go. It's a sort of Edgar Wright take on horror, but more serious than Shaun of the Dead.
Right.
but yeah, Shaun of the Dead. That's what we're here to talk about.
Iconic things.
I gather.
Yes.
Well, yeah. What about it stands out to you?
Okay, so I mean, I know this has predominantly been a horror-focused kind of thing, right? But things that make Edgar Wright great is the synchronization between what happens on film and like the audio cues of a song.
Yeah, like the literal like editing of things.
Yes, awesome. This is most prevalent, I think, in the beating of the guy that owns the Winchester when they're beating him with the pull cues.
Oh yeah. They're really wailing on that fucking guy.
Yeah, they're all going around in a circle, just beating the shit out of the zombie with the. What an man! Just an awesome movie. Really funny. I think I got the hardest laugh when when he's sitting down watching TV. And they're going through he's going through the news. Him being Simon Pegg. Simon Pegg's flicking through the news, and he's all hungover and shit after I guess late night drinking with his layabout roommate. Yeah, and so he goes back home and he's flipping through the fucking channels, and they're talking to all the people on all the channels are talking about the zombies or whatever, and then his roommate is in the curtains. There's a woman in the garden. So they go out to the garden and he pushes her and she falls on like the thing that holds the umbrella for like your patio furniture.
Yeah.
I don't know why that's so funny, but when she fell on the thing, just her faces after she like fell on the fucking thing, got, she's got a hole in her stomach or whatever. It was just fucking hysterical. I love it. So funny. Also, the other roommate that's just a stick in the mud, the one that's totally all about his girlfriend. Pete. Also, I can go on and on. It's such a great movie. The characters are awesome. You got the roommate that not Nick Frost. And not Simon Pegg, but the other one, the big one, who's a dick. He's always an asshole.
Oh, that's Pete. The other the girlfriend guy is David.
David's hilarious. David's fucking great. I love David, but Pete's also fucking yes. Pete's hilarious too. They take Pete's car. Oh, and Nick Frost can't drive the car. He's hauling ass everywhere. He's running over people, doing donuts and shit, and he slams on the brakes. This is a perfect spoof of a horror genre, of the horror films, of horror as a genre. It's a perfect. It's a very well made movie. Also, I mean, just like I really like Simon Pegg. I mean, he's a great actor. I like him in just about everything he's in. And it's really interesting to see how far we aged since 2004.
Yeah.
Like they all look so youthful. Everybody looks so youthful in this movie.
They do look a bit more youthful. That's true.
Yeah.
I mean, we're coming on 2 decades since this came out. Almost 20 years. So
Jesus Christ, we're getting old. It's the first thing I noticed is like, oh my God, look how youthful Simon Pegg looks. He's,
So who's this fresh-faced man? I don't recognize him.
Strapping lad. He's a strapping young lad.
His hairline's still not great, but,
But Simon Pegg's hilarious. Oh.
Yeah, he's great. Yeah.
I'm irreverent about this movie. I really, truly love this movie.
It's just a thoroughly entertaining film, and I think the thing about it is not only is it just a very funny comedy, but it is also still a good zombie film. I think overall,
totally, yeah.
Like it has moments where it does kind of pull back on the comedy lever in favor of like, no, this is actually genuinely like a horrifying thing to happen of people and being stuck in this environment during a zombie apocalypse. Like it still captures all of that, and at the same time it has that whole fucking scene where Simon Pegg goes out to get something from like the grocery store while everything is already happened.
No, I don't have any
he's just
fucking
completely
change.
fucking oblivious to anything. The guy comes back as a zombie. He's like, nah, fuck off. Yeah.
I don't have any change.
Yeah, I mean, that was incredible. That's just very funny, and I think that it just highlights, I mean, even back in 2004, Edgar Wright had a very, very specific filmmaking style, and it's unique and unlike a lot of other filmmakers, and it's brilliant. I mean, I think that's the biggest thing that stands out to me is like, this is not a standard comedy. This is not a standard zombie film. This is not a standard horror film. It's creative in ways that you wouldn't expect it to be. Like just the literal filmmaking of it, which I think, somewhat ties into what you said of the editing with the music and all that. Like, yes, that's all of it too, but just the literal like way that like he chooses to shoot certain things, and there's a lot of
like his zooms and his
quick zooms, and like there's a lot of smash cuts in terms of the editing. Like like Shaun, I think like brushing his teeth or something like that is just like like in terms of like how it's kind of put together, and it's
it's awesome. It's totally awesome. He's a really awesome director.
Like just such a very like
he's kinetic.
Obvious.
Kinetic filmmaker.
Yeah, the kinetic style, like it's really fun to watch. Like it's a very propulsive filmmaking style that keeps you engaged with the mundane, and then obviously when it's in the less mundane, it works too because it's all shot so interestingly. I mean, I think it's
really
funny.
like Edgar Wright.
I think it's. I still think it's probably one of Edgar Wright's best. I don't know that he necessarily peaked with his first like major movie or anything like that.
Baby Driver's pretty fucking good.
But he knew what he was doing back in 2004, and you could probably say he's maybe owned his craft in some ways, but like this is still like a really fucking great film. Even again, amongst the Edgar Wright filmography.
And, I mean, it touches on, I mean, I don't think we've really talked about it, but like what makes a good zombie film? What about if we're going to like the subgenre of zombies? I for one have always been a huge zombie fan. We didn't cover it this year. Maybe we'll cover it next year. Like the Romero, Dawn of the Dead, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And Night of the Living Dead, maybe we'll talk about that stuff. But
yeah, well, I mean, the zombie genre has had its heyday for a while, disappeared for a bit, and then came back in a big way with The Walking Dead.
Yeah, and
also
The Walking Dead just
killed all interest in it.
Just drove it into the fucking ground, like into the earth, deep into the earth.
There's still like 5 Walking Deads going on TV right now. Who knows?
But I mean, it really is a really cool subgenre of horror. You know what I mean? I mean the premise of zombies, right? Like, what makes a zombie? What is scary about zombies? The zombies return to their mundane lives and their mundane activities. They go to the mall or whatever. You know what I mean? There's a lot of different iterations of zombies. You have Resident Evil fast zombies, mutated zombies. You got slow moving zombies. This was definitely a pull from a Romero zombie, which is a slow-moving one. Which I think that the slow-moving zombies, the zombie in and of itself isn't scary, right? It's just a slow-moving, mindless thing. But what gets you is the numbers. That's what gets you with the zombies. It's the numbers. Which is a really cool, like, flip of, like, individually, nobody's really a threat to anything, you know what I mean? But you get enough people behind you, then they become a threat. It's a really cool, it's just a real cool, I don't know, thought exercise or whatever. But with this movie, so it's obviously inspired by the Romero zombies. Another really cool thing about like zombie stuff is that anybody and everybody can be a hero in the zombie apocalypse, right? You take somebody that is mundane or just coasting through, much like Simon Pegg's character or the
Or Nick Frost.
Nick Frost's character, right? Put him in a zombie apocalypse, and now they're put in a position to where they can make a difference. To where now Simon Pegg, who was a pushover or what have you, and just like coasting through, is now leading. It successfully is kind of debatable, but
little ragtag band of zombie.
But
zombie
the people that are totally like in charge of normal life, they don't know how to function. They don't know what to do. Yeah. But Simon Pegg can get him through. You know what I mean? And he might not know what he's doing all the time, but he's doing something. Mm-hmm. And which I think is really, I mean, that's the really cool thing about the zombie movies, because you have like people that are just normal people, and you put them in a different environment, and now suddenly they're thrust into different positions. You know what I mean? It's cool. I like zombie stuff, and this one's pretty good. It also deals with like family members turning into zombies, which is huge.
Well, that's what stands out for me about this is, although it obviously is a comedy and it is funny overall, it does have moments where it sidesteps into being a bit more serious and like underscoring like the true horrors of if something like this happened, like how you'd have to confront certain scenarios. So like his stepdad fucking sucks. He doesn't like his stepdad or whatever. So he turns into a zombie, and that's kind of played a bit of a joke, right? But
at the same time, his stepdad's like, "Hey, listen, buddy, I truly loved like, you," you know?
Yeah. So you get some genuine emotion in there, and then obviously it's kind of has a punch of humor after where he turns the fucking the car stereo off, which was funny.
Yeah.
but his mom is where it really gets heavy, I think, overall, of her hiding the bite and then turning, and then like, I'm gonna be the one that has to shoot her basically to prevent her from turning. Like that's some pretty fucking dark, heavy shit, and he kind of
it could have been, but I mean, the thing was the roommate, the girlfriend's roommate wanted to fucking shoot her.
Yeah,
it's like, all this shit, you just want to shoot my mom.
Yeah,
I couldn't help but laugh. What an asshole.
Well,
he doesn't like me now. He just wants to shoot my mom.
He tries to shoot him too, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does. He actually pulled the trigger.
Yeah. He is a twat.
What a dick.
I never called her a failed actress.
It's really a hysterical movie. I laughed the entire time. And Sarah was kind of like sleeping on me. She wasn't all about watching it, and she fell asleep on me, and I felt guilty every time I'd laugh because I've gained some weight since I quit smoking and this and that, or quit puffing. I haven't smoked in a while, but I just can't stop eating, so I've gained some weight, and every time I fucking laugh, I'm just like, my body jiggles, and I was laughing a lot. There's a lot of body jiggles going on. It's what a movie. Shaun of the Dead's great. I don't think the comedy is for everybody. I don't think everybody will be there.
But it's a very British style of humor, I think, first and foremost, which there are moments where I'm just like, what are they saying? Is this English? Is this still English? I'm not sure yet. It's not quite layer cake in terms of...
It's not quite. I was going to say, it's not like, layer cake's a league of its own.
Yeah, layer cake you got to watch with subtitles on. But there are moments in that, and I think just the general style of humor, I think couldn't play for everyone. And it still does have like the goriness and stuff that would be associated with a traditional zombie outing. Like David, who is indeed a twat, gets fucking eviscerated, man. Like he gets pulled out that window, and like they're pulling.
He gets
out
the classic, classic Dawn of the Dead.
Intestines are coming out.
Yes.
I mean,
but the funniest
gnarly,
thing was,
fucking limbs are getting pulled off.
Did you, they pulled his legs off, and his head got pulled off. But did you see him do the tongue thing?
Oh, I don't know if I did.
He like stuck his tongue out while I was getting like just ate up, and he stuck his tongue out and just like threw it back and forth like Jabba. It was like a Jabba the Hutt strangling scene. It was fucking hilarious.
Oh, I'll have to go back and look at that. Funnier for zombie. Just bit it off. Be gnarly.
It's just a fucking funny movie.
It's
funny
very
movie.
Funny. Yeah, I mean, it's not a film that requires us to dissect it for 30 minutes, because at the end of the day, it's just a fun, twist on the zombie genre. Add a dash of humor, add a dash of creativity, courtesy of your Edgar Wright directing style. Charming cast with Simon Pegg and Nick Frost and the others. Like, it's
the start of a wonderful career for a very talented. I would say for a very talented Simon Pegg and a very talented Edgar Wright. Simon, definitely. I mean, we didn't talk a whole lot about Simon Pegg, but Simon Pegg is incredibly talented. So Simon Pegg, Edgar Wright, both of you guys, hats off to both y'all, because and
I hope you're listening so you can hear this.
Yeah,
please.
Yeah.
And support us on Patreon if you would, please. I know you can afford it. Might even be able to chip in $3 a month, you might say.
Yeah, it was the start to a wonderful career for both of them. So
that's what they say. No, I don't have anything. No change.
He just walks right by that zombie.
Yeah. All right. So done with Shaun of the Dead. Then on to the next one, into the 2010s. Oh man, 2010s. Oof. Feels weird to say that. A film called The Endless, released April 6th, 2018, a sci-fi horror drama written by Justin Benson, directed by Justin Benson and Aaron Moorhead. Stars Justin Benson and Aaron Moorhead. Callie Hernandez, Tate Ellington, Lou Temple, James Jordan. And it's about kids who escaped a UFO death cult who, as now two adult brothers. Well, I could have phrased that better. They seek answers after an old videotape surfaces and brings them back to where they began. And before we begin talking about The Endless in some fuller detail, I will just say that my fun fact for Shaun of the Dead was that the Simon Pegg used to actually go to a local pub called the Winchester, which is the inspiration for the pub and Shaun of the Dead. And the names of the owners were based off of the real life owners. They used to make toasted sandwiches, so there's a reference to that. And they also used to him and Nick Frost used to regularly do the Thursday night quiz there, which is why when they knock on the door as they're trying to get in, and they say, "We do the quiz." So there you go.
So him and Nick Frost actually know each other.
Yes, I think they were buddies.
Oh, that's so wonderful. I love it when that happens.
Yeah, buddies, man. So anyway, The Endless. This is what's sci-fi horror. That's obviously a bit different than anything we've talked about thus far. I think this is also significantly lower budget than some of the others. Well, at least in terms of modern sensibilities, I guess we'll say. I mean, like Nightmare on Elm Street we talked about was made for $1 million. I'm sure that the 2010 Nightmare on Elm Street was not made for $1 million, to make a modern version of that film cost a lot more. The Endless, I would guess, I couldn't actually find any numbers on the budget, but I would guess it was about $1 million, if that, in terms of budget. So it's a bit different, but it's these two cats, Benson and Moorhead, who we've seen a little bit of their stuff. You've seen more than I have. They technically did a couple of episodes of Moon Knight, which we talked about on an episode. But off on their own, they've mostly been partnering together for some crazy out there horror, sci-fi kind of things. Started with a film called Resolution, then did a film called Spring, and then did this film, The Endless, and then did Synchronic with Anthony Mackie afterwards. But talking about The Endless, I mean, what do you have to say on a little sci-fi horror joint here?
So I was introduced to Justin Benson and Aaron Moorhead, I think, with a movie called Spring. Okay. I think that was the first movie I watched with them. Yeah. And then I watched Resolution, and then I watched the Anthony Mackie movie,
Synchronic.
Synchronic, that's it. I always struggle with the name of that movie. And then, of course, Moon Knight.
So this was both of our first time watching this, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
So the really cool thing to this movie, my fun fact for this movie is it shares a sequence with a guy and his best friend. One of the guys is like hooked on meth or whatever, and he's got him chained up to like the heater inside this house. That was the bulk of the movie for resolution. So this movie is...
I was reading about this a little bit, yeah, because I have not seen Resolution, but you have, so that probably plays a little better when you have the background. In.
These guys show up in this movie, and I'm like, oh,
it's like Jay and Silent Bob, man.
Yeah, exactly. It's exactly what it is. And they're up there in this cabin or whatever, doing their thing, and they're like doomed to repeat the same cycle as everybody else, but they're pissed off about it. Resolution's a cool movie. It's not quite as I don't think it's quite as like complete as this movie, Okay. This movie feels like it's got less open ends, it feels like. But I will say that I thoroughly enjoyed this movie. I thought it was real thought-invoking. It's pretty cool. It's a pretty cool concept. I don't know. I just like their sensibilities as directors. They, on their own projects, they always, with, I feel like with Spring being the exception, this makes the, third movie. It's the third movie that deals with time and like repeating itself and stuff. So they have these, as directors, and I guess writers, I guess they I don't know, they like to dwell on that stuff. And I think they make thought evoking choices when they deal with time and or involvement and with it and stuff. I think they're real cool guys. I like their stuff. The pacing on the thing that irritated me most with this movie was it seemed like there was a haze over the film. Like they filmed a lot of this movie with what seemed to be like a fucking what's the word for it? Like fisheye lens.
Okay.
Yeah. I wasn't a big fan of that. When it opened up and it also seemed like there was a lot of haze. I also wasn't
literal haze, like haziness and the cinematography kind of thing.
Yeah, and I thought that maybe that they were going for like, hey, this is it, and it might be the case, right? Where this is older, this took place in the past, and when it clears up, because it does clear up, there's definitely differences in the clarity of the film. Maybe this is what's in the present. And it makes you kind of think about that. Like, are they stuck in a loop? And it might be that's the kind of movies that these guys make. You know what I mean? It makes you kind of think about that stuff. Which is why I like watching their stuff, right? You don't really know. One unanswered question is when did they send the tape?
Mm-hmm.
It's never answered. When did they send the tape?
Right. They're just like, we didn't send that.
So if they didn't send the tape, when did they send the tape? And nobody knows when they sent the fucking tape. So you don't know, right? So it's very possible that the hazy scenes are set in the past and the clear scenes are set in the present or in the future, whatever. You don't know. And maybe if you sit there and you digest it long enough, maybe you can come to the conclusion that you're looking for. Maybe it's written inside this Wikipedia that I have pulled up, but I did not read it. And I don't know what the answer is. But I can say that I wasn't a fan of the haze. It was really fucking heavy. Also wasn't the biggest fan of the fisheye. It was really fucking heavy too. But aside from that, I thought it was a cool premise. It felt like a movie that we've seen recently, but I couldn't put my finger on it. Maybe it was like Nope I guess, is probably the closest thing. But that just deals with aliens in general, in plain sight, and these aliens are in plain sight too, or whatever they are. We don't know, but I don't know. Felt like a cool movie with a cool premise, well thought out. I didn't fully understand everything. Obviously, I don't understand who sent the tape, but yeah, cool movie. What'd you get from it? How was this for a first experience?
Yeah, I mean, first thing I think I'll mention is like relative to the 6 other films that we're covering / have already covered. Like this probably stands out for listeners as like, I don't think I've ever heard of that. And I think we kind of did that purposefully, where it's like, we like these filmmakers. You'd seen more stuff than I had. We like their sensibilities. This got really good reviews. And it's like a different genre of horror that came out fairly recently, 4.5 years ago, sci-fi horror, a little different bent than the other things that we've done. And I think the reason that it kind of came and went is that it's not, it's pretty art house. It's not an A24 film or anything like that, and really it doesn't really feel like an A24 film, I'll say, but it does feel fucking out there, and it feels low budget. I don't mean in a necessarily bad way, but it's not like these others that we've already talked about, or even like Hellraiser or anything like that. Like it's very much its own trippy in its own world kind of film, and I think that's kind of what attracted it to us was having this kind of, all right, this is different. This is not anything that we've already talked about or seen. So that's kind of the first thing that jumps out to me to talk about. As far as the film itself, I really enjoyed it. Do I understand everything? No, I don't think so.
That's okay, right? That's cool, right?
That's okay,
awesome.
Because I got enough out of it that I did enjoy it overall. Like, I think that there are things about it where, like, I don't think Benson and Moorhead are, like, the best actors in the world. I think that's somewhat symptomatic of, like, they're not actors, like that kind of thing where it's like, okay, they're good enough in this that I didn't really care. In most of pretty much the entire cast, I'm like, I don't know who any of these people are. And that's fine, because that's just kind of the nature of what a film like this is, made for however much money it was made for, which I reckon is not a lot, but it does a lot with a little. I think overall it rides on a premise that the setup is okay. All right, what's going on here? And then it gives you kind of a twist and a hook halfway through. And then that's where it's just like, okay, that's pretty fucking cool. And I think once it kind of lays all of its cards on the table, so to speak, that's when I really got hooked into it. I'm like, all right, this is pretty, I like this a lot. Because like the cult, basically the first half is like, is it a cult or not? And it's like, well,
it's kind of cult. It's pretty much cult.
It's pretty culty. Pretty culty. Looks like a cult. Smells
and
like
that
a
was
cult.
And there was a calling card throughout the entire movie. Do you mind if we do something culty? Nah, guess not. Nah, go ahead.
Might as well embrace it. I enjoyed like the build up of the first hour, because I wasn't quite sure where it was going. It's obviously a question of how it pays everything off, of whether it's going to be successful, that whole build up. But I thought it was successful, because it was an interesting. I thought it brought it to an interesting setting with the cult, where there's enough uneasiness and enough weirdness, where you're just like, all right, something weird is going on here, and I don't know that it's as simple as, well, they're just a cult and they're fucking weirdos who are going to kill themselves to service a UFO, for aliens type of thing. Like that almost felt like too simple of an explanation for certain things. And I think that it does a good job of gradually introducing elements that make you feel like, all right, something weird and unsettling is happening here. Like the two things that stand out for me are when he throws the baseball up in the air. I'm like,
oh yeah, that was the best, right?
I was like, I don't think that's a magic trick. I think something else is going on here.
So did the character. The character is like, what the fuck?
Yeah. And it was a good, like, genuine reaction of like, okay, well, the card trick, like, I'll, whatever. But like that's what? Huh? What?
It's unnerving. Yeah, it's weird.
And the other thing, which was a very culty thing for them to do, was the struggle We know where they're pulling the rope, and
yeah,
like, it was cringy to watch because I'm just like, oh god, I can't even imagine being in that scenario. If they said my name, I would just die on the inside and shrivel up and fall to bits. But it worked because by the end of that scene, you see that fucker smiling, who's just fucking smiling the whole goddamn movie, and it's like, oh, he's not on a ladder. Like something's going on here. Like what are we doing here? Like, what are we getting here? Like what sort of...
His brother got his arm ripped out of his socket. Like he got yanked hard.
Yeah. He got fucked up. Like what are we dealing with here? And then like those last like 50 minutes are just like, yeah, we're not really a cult. We're stuck in fucking time loops, man. I'm like, okay,
what?
I could vibe with that. And then, when you go in these literal time loop bubbles. And like you experience like a little mini horror cycle through each like little character. You got the guy who's always fucking running around. Like that was interesting.
Yeah.
It's like, why the fuck did you come back, you goddamn moron motherfucker? Like, yeah, they probably shouldn't have come back. They knew it was at best they knew it was basically a cult, even if it wasn't really a cult. Like, why did they go back? That was a bad idea. You're right. But then you had that guy who's in the fucking like tent. And he's just exploding every 3 seconds.
Yeah, it's terrible.
Like that's the worst loop to be in. I don't know if this.
Oh my god! Could you imagine
that guy? He's just like, fuck this guy. This guy's. That's some Hellraiser shit in terms of right there.
And the other people are on what? They're on a 10-year loop, right?
Right, which I think explains why they're as old as they seem to be, but still look as youthful as they do. Like there's other like, I don't know. I think it's because like when they go in the room, like there's like tapes from like what 30s, 40s and shit. Like it's implied that they've been there for a long time. Which I'd be curious to rewatch it with that knowledge in hand of like, are they sowing the seeds?
Well, like some of them
setting that up.
Some of them are like you have the guy that actually like locks the door. Obviously, he's been here for a long time.
Right. Yeah, he's been brewing beer for 100 years. It's like the old fucking monks in Belgium. He's one of them.
Yeah, right.
He's been doing that shit. That's why he can turn that shit for a profit, because he's had a lot of time to fucking tinker with the formula for that shit. Thames Hefeweizen.
But
that's some good shit right there.
Some old shit, old recipe. But then you have like you got the guy that does the magic tricks, and obviously he's from, or you had probably the best one is the one that actually escaped from like the mental asylum or whatever. She draws the pictures.
Oh, right, yeah.
So they like pick up people through the decades. The big thing is was the lady that Justin. Also, they share the same names. Like Justin is Justin in the movie.
Yeah.
Would have
been rude if they reversed their names. That would have been really rude for them to do.
But Justin is the lady that Justin meets the one that's looking for her husband?
Right. Yeah. I think so. Definitely.
Is that,
who's the wife of the character from the other movie, Resolution?
Or
I think.
Oh, I didn't think about that.
Well, that's what I got out of that. Because he talks about how he has a wife and kid that he's going back to, and she said she's looking for her husband who's disappeared, and kids being taken care of by parents.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I thought maybe that might be that might be their mom. But then he'd recognize them.
Well, so that probably, I don't think it's their mom.
I think you're right. I think it's them. I think it's the other people.
But that did
in the other time bubble.
The one thing that it did that you've reminded me of, I guess, is they make a comment when they're driving over in the very first place about the picture on the side of the road, like at the memorial for their mom, who did they say died in a car accident or something like that?
Yeah, something like that, right?
We don't see the mom at any point, but I feel like they make a particular comment about how well preserved the picture is, and I wondered if that was a subtle indicator that
they're still in the bubble.
There's a bigger bubble or a separate bubble in which that's in, and so even though they escape the one bubble, maybe they're in a different bubble now with the time loop or something like that. I don't know.
It's true.
I don't know. I don't know that there's anything concrete to support that beyond that, but I don't know. Thought that was kind of interesting. Maybe the whole world's in a bubble. Who's to say?
Who's to say? We don't know.
We don't know.
And I think that's the cool thing about their shit. This is what they do.
Yeah, it's like a heady film, but not too much. Not in a way that's like overwhelming and like, like it doesn't give you a headache or anything thinking about it. But it's enough that it's interesting, and there are some disparate pieces that like you don't have definitive answers for, and you can speculate. Like there's things that we can speculate about and try to like hash out, in a dialogue. But on the whole, I think the takeaway for me, at least, walking away from it, was like, oh, that was cool, and it went in unexpected and different directions, and I liked those unexpected and different directions. I thought they were clever, and I thought that when I look back at certain things, I'm like, yeah, that adds up, and it's interesting. I left satisfied.
You should watch their other movies.
I should watch the other movies. Yeah, you're right. I should definitely watch Resolution because I feel like that might pay off.
It's related
in reverse.
For sure.
Seeing those two guys and the setting of whatever that film kind of has.
They're pretty funny. The guy that's all cranked out, he's pretty hilarious. They're both pretty funny. It's a pretty cool movie. Spring was pretty cool too. I think it's got to do with like mermaids, if I remember right.
Okay.
But even if you just watch the Anthony Mackie movie is unrelated, but it's
I do want to watch that.
It's like you take their ideas and stuff that they've been playing with for a few years, and you kind of like give it a big budget with some good actors.
That's what I was going to say. That almost feels like they've stepped up. They have more money to play with, more talent to play with. Like, what do they do? And apparently, that's interesting. I literally just Googled it, and it says that it shares continuity with this movie and Resolution. I don't know in what way, but that's interesting.
Synchronic does?
If Wikipedia is to be trusted anyway, that's what it says.
Well, I wonder what the relationship there is. Huh.
You got a little.
That's pretty cool.
A little Benson Moorhead universe going on. The Benson Moorhead cinematic universe, the BMCU. How about that?
Yeah.
Pretty cool. Pretty cool for these guys to put together their own little fucking world that they've been, crafting in films and stuff. Yeah, it's cool. I do want to watch that. I want to watch Resolution. I'll fucking watch Spring. I feel like I've heard good things about that too. Seems like these guys just have a really good, grasp of filmmaking, and I think they just sort of have like some fun, creative visions for things, and it's neat to see.
Yeah.
Kind of living in this indie world, and obviously beyond with Synchronic and Moon Knight and stuff, but yeah.
It's mentioned that the titular drug was synthesized from the red flower grown in the California desert, referencing the plant smoked by members of the commune in the film Endless.
I see. So it's pretty minimal, but it's there. I see. Okay.
Right.
All right. Well, there you go.
Cool.
My fun fact was Benson and Moorhead, the directors, decided to be the main characters in this because they wanted to keep the budget down. And I respect that. That feels like something we would do if once upon a time we decided, you know what, we're gonna take
we'll do it.
Movies into we're doing big time. We're no one's going to college. We're not doing that shit. We're making movies, man.
God, what a life that would
something
be.
We would have done. So, props to them. Endless. It's an obscure kind of out there thing, but I think it's worth checking out. Yeah, I mean, I quite enjoyed it.
You'll enjoy their other stuff too.
Low budget, obscure horror thing. I think, yeah, very different from anything else that we have on this episode, and I think that was a nice kind of refreshing thing to have something different. So, streaming on Peacock, by the way, for anyone that wants to check it out, based on what we've spoiled the shit out of it already, but nonetheless, you could still find some enjoyment, even with some preconceived knowledge going in. And I think I don't know if I actually specified it, so let me rattle off some streaming options for the others, because I think I forgot to do that. Nightmare on Elm Street is on HBO Max. I will say that. I don't think that Dracula is streaming at the moment. Nope, take it back. It's on Prime Video, so you're covered there. And Shaun of the Dead you can watch on Hulu. So there you go. There you go. Catching things up. And I know something else you can watch on Hulu if you're ready to talk about it. Our final film of the evening.
What's that?
It's what kickstarted this all. Came out on Hulu October 7th of this year. We're in the 2020s, baby. Modern times. It's Hellraiser, the 2022 edition of Hellraiser. Written by Ben Collins and Luke Petrowski. Directed by David Bruckner. Starring Odessa Azion, Jamie Clayton, Adam Faison, Drew Starkey, Brandon Flynn, Wefa Hines, and Goran Wisniak. It's about a young woman struggling with addiction who comes into possession of an ancient puzzle box, unaware that its purpose is to summon the Cenobites.
Holy shit.
I think you've been holding this in for quite literally almost a month now.
It's been hard. I try to talk to people about... So the first thing that I'd like to say, okay?
Yes.
Is...
As he holds up a spiral notebook.
I took some notes.
Okay, maybe I just couldn't see it there, but...
No, it's definitely almost... It's
okay.
Pretty much almost... I have three lines worth of text.
Okay.
And the second line is only score, question mark, exclamation point. Anyways, this is a movie where if you haven't seen it and you like try to initiate conversation about a movie that you've seen recently, I feel like you shouldn't like kick off the conversation with Hellraiser. Otherwise, you kind of seem like a weirdo. Every time I try to bring it up, I kind of feel like a weirdo. Have you seen Hellraiser? What's that? Oh, it's a movie where like, these people summon these demons that just like enjoy delivering pain on humans. Like, you watched that? Yeah, I watched it. Yeah. You just kind of feel weird. So anyways, I'm glad that you watched it and we can talk about it because now
I had to wait until Anna, I think, was quite literally out of town, but indeed I watched it.
I do feel weird talking about Hellraiser with strangers. So I've always been fascinated by Hellraiser.
Yeah, I mean, this is another one that's had a long-running franchise of which there are many, many shitty entries.
Many, yes. Many. Comic books have been made about the Cenobites, which is cool.
Based off of a Clive Barker novella in the first place.
Yeah, that's right. It's pretty cool. I've always been fascinated most by the puzzle box. Puzzle box has always captivated my attention. Right, so like these people are drawn to this box, and they're. It's kind of like duplicitous, if that's a word. They're drawn to the Rubik's Cube looking box.
Yeah, they want to solve it.
They want to solve it. Exactly. Well, they don't want to solve. Well, I mean, some of them want to solve it. The billionaire guy wanted to solve it.
Yeah. Most people don't realize the consequences of doing so, I guess.
Right, and so what happens is they're drawn to the pain of like. Not being able to solve the box, and they solve the box, and they're like, oh, it's like a whole nother thing, right? Which I think is really cool. The coolest thing, well, one of the coolest things about this movie, I think there's a lot of I told myself I wasn't going to drink tonight because I drank on Halloween. I've since finished off a bottle of wine, so I'm getting kind of wordy. There's a lot of things that I like about this movie. The first thing that I like is the puzzle box. The puzzle box in this movie is fucking super cool. It's kind of like a Doctor Who telephone booth, like it constantly like makes itself bigger and smaller. And then they named, I don't know if this is present in any other like future iterations of Hellraiser from like the old school one, but they named the different formations of the box. Which I thought was...
Yeah, I think that's a unique addition to the lore. Not that I'm a Hellraiser expert or anything like that. I think I've quite literally seen the original bits and well, actually, I swear, maybe I'm making this up. I feel like you and I watched at least part of a really shitty one at one point.
Yeah, it was terrible. I don't remember what it was, but it was.
I don't know that we watched all of it, but I recall it being quite fucking bad. So my living memory of what is really limited to the first one, which I've watched relatively recently, and then obviously this one, and then bits and pieces of watching elements of the others, and like, oh wow, this is quite bad. So I think that's a novel thing. I mean, I think usually it's just like a straight up like Rubik's Cube type thing. You solve it and it's solved, and then the Cenobites are summoned. This is this like the box having different incarnations. I think that's pretty new.
Different configuration.
Yeah.
You've chosen the lament configuration.
It's fucking cool. That's cool. I take it. The fact that so many people, like, the box naturally goes through like these different configurations before it reaches like the one before you can summon the Cenobites and get your wish, and the fact that the wish is like all fucked up, like you think you're getting one thing, but you're gonna get fucked up because you solved the box. I enjoyed that. I think that the score in this movie. So you watched the movie by yourself. Did you turn it way up? Did you crank it up when you watched it?
I don't know if I cranked it way up, but I feel like I, was embracing the home theater environment. Surely.
Were you moved by this score? Like, did it? I had it cranked up.
I can't say that I was, honestly.
Okay.
One thing I will note, and this is somewhat factoring into what our conversation will be, is this is the first one, I guess, like you, that I watched. So it has been at least a few weeks since I watched it. But even factoring that in, I don't specifically recall the score. I couldn't say, unfortunately. So
no, it's okay. The score for me.
I wish I was as hype about it as you, and it could be very good, and I might just need something to, like, jog my memory with it, but it doesn't. It's not one of those things that stands out to me looking back on it right now.
Score in this movie for me would just it's got a lot of low end, but it's got like a lot of low end on like classical stuff, right? So like it's just whoa, just it's a lot of atmospheric stuff, but it really, really, really works your speakers. So if you got some subs, it's going to sound really, really good.
Go with subs. Maybe good use of surround as well, potentially.
Exactly. Yes. The sound design in this movie I thought was absolute. I think that's probably the most moving thing about this movie. It really worked the speakers. I think the box was really cool, just like the design. And then like the added lore of the box was really cool. I thought the characters in and of themselves were pretty like generic Hellraiser characters. Like, I didn't think that they were anything like stand up. I thought it was kind of funny that the guy turned into a Cenobite at the end, like,
yeah. I mean, I agree overall. I think and this is something I think you probably would have mentioned to me, certainly off air, but I think even probably the first time we even brought this up at all is it has some similarities to the Evil Dead reboot. And I think, most notably, its lead character is someone kind of in the throes of addiction who's struggling with that, trying to kick it, and then falls into a world of shit going sideways. For one, it's Deadites. For the other, it's fucking Cenobites and the box and stuff like that. But I didn't find the characters terribly interesting. No. I thought the Evil Dead characters had more personality to them compared to this.
Yes.
So I think that
I'd agree with
held
you.
it back a little bit. And I found the millionaire guy, whoever he is. I don't know.
Kind of unbearable a little bit. Like, he's a little like, what the fuck? I don't need you hiding in the walls.
I felt he was a bit over the top. In terms
he was
of
definitely hamming it up.
And even just the design of like the fucking thing, through his chest, like it felt a bit silly. Like it was It was a little hard to take him seriously at points, and it's. I liked that idea of like he solved the box, he got his reward, and because it's a Cenobites, all they do is just fuck with people. So his reward is like his sensations, like they just manipulate like his fucking like his tendons and shit, like
so like the whole thing with them is they can't distinguish pain from pleasure.
There's his nerves. His nerves is what it is, right?
Yeah,
just manipulate his fucking nerves at will, so he can feel things that no one can feel because they can manipulate it in a very specific way. And it's like, yeah, that's a good like,
it's fucked up.
Yeah, it's a really fucked up like gift that feels appropriate of just being like, oh, you weren't satisfied with what you had before? Well, how about this? And he's like, I don't love this anymore. Actually, this fucking sucks. Like, yeah, dipshit. What'd you think was going to happen?
Yeah, it's pretty funny. I laughed about it,
but I felt the actual visual depiction of it, just big fucking.
It's like a giant, like,
was a bit ridiculous.
I mean, it is. It's a weird movie. Also, is like his house is like a constantly shifting thing, so he could capture the Cenobites.
See, that's something I liked, like the fucking thing that like he turned it into like a cage with the shit like collapsing around it. Like I thought that was actually like kind of neat in terms of how that worked.
It's cool.
Yeah,
it's just over the top. A lot of it's over the top.
Yeah, you're right. But yeah, that was. I liked that design particularly more than fucking big old
the handle thing comes. Yeah, it's a little strange.
Yeah.
How'd you feel about him turning into a Cenobite? Like he's like, I'll totally just. Yeah, you're right. That's what I really wanted. I wanted power. I've suffered for a decade with this thing in my chest. But now I trust you. Well, and you're right. I want power. So they hook him with the giant hook from the upside down pyramid.
Yeah, I mean it's pretty intense. I liked that actually. I thought that was a fitting ending for this fucking this fucking
the weird
guy.
Billionaire guy.
This fucking guy, man. No, I liked that. I thought that was an appropriate, like, of course, power is not quite literally power. Of your Superman now, you have power, but you're constrained to this form where you've been mutilated and you now haunt, I guess, people, as a Cenobite for eternity or whatever, the actual lore. Like it works. I thought that was pretty well done. I liked that as like a sort of comeuppance for this guy of like, maybe stop fucking with things you shouldn't be fucking with. But I also, as an extension of that, I liked that like the lament configuration, which is what the main character goes for at the end, is basically like, yeah, you kind of killed all your friends and your family, so enjoy life now, have fun. Like that was kind of a neat kind of like everything has, it's not like going through this, solving this thing is going to really reward you in the end. Like there's going to be something that comes out of it that will be with you forever. And so whether it's a literal contraption going through your fucking chest or being a Cenobite or just living with guilt for the rest of your life, I don't know. I thought that was kind of an interesting way that they handled the lore personally.
So what'd you think about the new Pinhead?
I thought she was great. Yeah. Different than the original, different than Doug Radley, who, has an iconic look, an iconic voice, but I thought that Jamie Clayton did a really good job. I liked how they did her voice with, it's a little extra digital, modulation added atop it, but I thought it I thought it worked really well. I liked what they did with her look. And I felt like she had like a cool, calm but still extremely menacing presence, as the Cenobites.
Totally.
Like I feel like the other Cenobites are more like the horrific designs, in terms of how they did it, which I guess just as a side note, somewhat ties into my fun fact, which is actually kind of to do with the design elements of the Cenobites this time. In the original, obviously they have like leather and like latex and stuff like that. Like that's what they wear. Fetish wear, basically. PVC fetish wear is what they're described as. And the reason that they changed it is they basically felt like that sort of thing was too mainstream now to be like scary or out there or like feel like, like something that's like unnerving. And so they changed it so that it's like mutilated flesh, that, they're like using like, skin being peeled to turn it into like outfits, basically, which is pretty fucked up, right? Hopefully that doesn't become mainstream at any point. Otherwise we're in fucking trouble. But
well, like that one Cenobite had like that giant thing from like Dracula, looked like the Dracula, like the redhead.
Yeah.
But her throat was peeled out, right? They're crazy. Cenobites are fucking nuts. They don't make any sense.
Yeah, no, they're the designs I think were really, I think they were great all around. I mean, like Pinhead definitely, like she's got like shit around her throat and just the, like bits of her skin, I guess, just kind of literally cut away and stuff, like almost to look like a dress or something like that. Right, though the one that has like almost like a hood looking thing. There's the Chatterer, the teeth one.
Classic
one. There's another one that's like the jaws removed or something. I don't know. Like they're all fucked up looking. I mean, it's how,
they're
it's how it's supposed to be, right? There's the one with like the flat face or something like that. I don't know. All sorts of craziness, man. But I thought her depiction was really good. I guess to get back to the question you actually asked. I liked. Yeah, I don't know. I liked her. I thought she was effective. I liked the interactions that she had with the characters. It worked for me. How about you?
Oh yeah, no, I didn't have any problems at all. I think me personally, I would encourage you to perhaps listen to the score in and of itself.
Yeah, no, I would be keen to do that, just to revisit it, see if things stand out to me. Like, oh, no, I do remember that. I think it could be just a case of not having seen it.
It's a little bit for almost. It's a little bit metal and it's a little bit dubstep. Like it's
okay.
It's different.
Okay.
But like the first sequence, like with the cinematography, I thought was awesome too in this movie. I thought it was really cool. But like that first sequence where like it kind of like builds up and it's like zooming around the city. I don't know if you remember that opening shot or not. Like, or kind of like where like it's going up the side of a building and then it releases to the full cityscape or whatever. Mm-hmm. But with the score, I thought it was just really well done. And that's when I knew we were in for something a little bit different, a little bit special. I really, really enjoyed this movie. I thought it was a really awesome take on Hellraiser. I think it elevated the franchise in a huge way, in a way that it hasn't seen since like the original Hellraiser. And I wasn't even really I've always been intrigued by Hellraiser as a franchise, but I've never been like, I don't know. Like I haven't seen all the movies. I just saw the first one, and I think I saw Revelations, which is what I watched with you, and that one was definitely shit.
That's probably what it was. Yeah.
And this is definitely not shit. I think it's I really, really enjoyed it. I thought it was really good, despite its shortcomings. It's not an Evil Dead remake, and it's not a Shaun of the Dead, and it's not a Exorcist. But for a modern remake of a celebrated IP, I think it's probably one of the best remakes that it's definitely better than Nightmare on Elm Street remake. I don't know did we ever get a Friday the 13th remake?
We did. Friday the 13th was like 2009-ish, I think.
Was it shit?
I think it was all right. Yeah, I mean, I think for what it was all right. It was better than the Nightmare one, for sure.
Okay. Well, I don't know. I don't really remember it, but this is up there. This is definitely up there. It's like, as far as what I regard for good horror movies, I think this is a good horror movie. I really enjoyed it. So yeah, I was pumped to talk about it. That score and just I don't know. The box, man. The box is fucking cool. And the Cenobites are cool too. They're like, oh, we reside at the, I don't even know what the fuck they say. They're just fucking cool. They're like.
It seemed like you were doing a pretty good voice there, though.
Oh, did you like that? It was like
Like we reside at the end of experience.
And it's, I don't know. It's just, I don't know. It's heady shit. It's cool. I like it. I enjoyed it. Thought it was unique. So that's it. That's what I experienced on my Halloween. Let's see if I can find at least a Hellraiser quote.
I was going to say, I want to try to feed you one so we can get it in the voice.
Oh.
Find a good one.
I don't know. It says, except the pain you have wrought, greater delights await. We wish to see you proceed. We have such sights to show you.
Yes, we have such sights to show you. That's a classic. That's pulled from the original too.
It's good, right? Like it's creepy, super creepy shit. But it's, I don't know. They're really cool. I don't know. I just enjoy them. The Cenobites.
Explorers in the further.
Yes, that's it.
Explorers in the further regions of experience.
Yes. It's
demons to some, angels to others.
That's it. It's good. Where'd you find that? That's exactly what it is, though. Explorers in the further regions of experience. Of sensation's rim. Our gifts are boundless. I don't want them.
Yes, you do.
Anyways.
Good stuff.
I thought it was cool. That was a cool movie. Really enjoyed it.
I agree. I think it's a cool movie. I think it shares some commonalities with to make comparisons to films we've covered on this episode. I think it shares some commonalities with Dracula for me. And I don't mean that in a bad way, but just in the sense that I think that the production design of it is cooler than the other aspects of it. I think
that's fair. Yeah.
I think that, the way that it's filmed is nice. It looks good. I like the Cenobite design. I think Jamie Clayton is really, really great in it. And I think that like the fucking like the lore of it is badass. Like it's fucking cool, and it's it's proper horror-y shit.
Oh man, like when they're driving down they're trying to escape or whatever, and then the back of the van turned into like
the shit extends and it goes over. Yeah, like that stuff was really fucking cool how they did all of those sequences. And that girl, by the way, gets fucked up. Well, she gets like a whole fucking she gets like fucking skinned alive, basically, right?
Yeah,
or, like her whole back. Like, oh man,
like her back just appears in the van because she got like caught in the middle of it. Yeah, it's like a big splash of blood. It's
that was brutal. I feel like that was the most brutal like moment of gore in the whole film, at least that I can recall. I don't know.
Yeah, it was
pretty brutal, as I recall. But
you also have to. Oh, I tell you what, which one was unnerving too was like the Cenobite that I can't remember which one it was, but like got caught between the doors, and like it's trying to get to the other person so bad.
Because like there's one that's like moving really slowly, and then like it's like actually JK, I can run lol. Is that the one? Is that the same one? Maybe.
Yeah, I think it's the one that had like its skin up around its face. I'm looking at a picture of it right now, and she like breaks loose of that, and she like just tears her skin off trying to get to the other person.
Yeah,
Anyways, they're really fucking. Like I said, it's a really strange movie to try to talk to strangers about because it's really twisted.
Well, it's not for everyone. I mean,
no, it's not.
Undoubtedly, it's not for everyone. But I like this sort of weird, unnerving shit. Like I like the designs. I like that about it. I think that's the stuff that really works in this film. Like the slashery, gory kind of moments, I think work really well in this. I think the narrative is what holds this film back. I just think the characters aren't either likable or are kind of nothing. I think the millionaire guy kind of takes away from it, and he's just kind of ridiculous the whole time. And
he was cool in the beginning. I liked him in the beginning.
like the very, very beginning, like the first
Yeah.
scene kind of thing. Yeah, he's fine there. I didn't need
Yeah.
him to come back, or if he was going to come back, not in this incarnation. You know, it was a bit, I don't know, it was a bit Penbacker from Sunshiny for me, where I'm just like,
right.
I don't need this, man. Like everything else, like the design elements of this work well enough without this guy being a fucking asshat, changing the narrative of everything. Like, I don't need that. I didn't need that in it. Like, the Cenobites are fucking menacing. Let them be the bad guys. Like, we don't need this guy being an asshole to and then like the boyfriend being an asshole too, who's in league with him the whole time. I didn't need any of that. I didn't need any of that.
Just it's totally true. I forgot about that guy.
Let it stand on its own two legs of like, you have like fucking like demon motherfuckers like tormenting this woman who's already being tormented by drug addiction. Like, that's an interesting angle. Play with that more. Like, it kind of feels like they kind of just dropped that thread pretty early on, and that was that, And
it was interesting because she like had no, like, she's got her own demons, right? So like she's not like, she's like able to just talk to him.
Yeah.
Because she's,
I don't know. I think that's an interesting starting point, and I kind of just felt like the narrative didn't really build out in a satisfying way from that point. That's what held back my overall enjoyment of it. Like, everything that went into the making of it feels like, oh yeah, like they kind of do respect and understand the Hellraiser lore in a way that the 19 other films really haven't. I felt like they did it justice in that particular regard, but I just wish it had a better like bones that it was working from in terms of like where they were trying to build the plot from. So that's the thing that didn't make it work as well for me overall, and that's why I compare it to Dracula. It's just like, so many good things went into this, and that somehow the final product isn't exactly the sum of its parts.
It didn't land, right?
Yeah. But I enjoyed the hell out of it, at the same time. So don't mistake it as I didn't like it or anything like that. I just think it could have been better, and I
that's
think
fair. Yeah, no. I think the first one was pretty cool.
Yeah, honestly, though, it's probably not that far off from how I feel about the first one. The first one is no Exorcist. The first one is not an amazing film. I think it has its own set of issues and.
It does. It's been a long time since I watched it, but
so I think that it's probably different in certain ways, and this is not in any way a shot-for-shot remake of that first one, which I think is good. I think it stands apart, and has elements that work for it, So I think that I think it's a worthy remake or reboot or however you treat it of the original Hellraiser. I think it does it justice overall, but it could have been better. Could
have been better.
My general takeaway is
sure.
I think that the narrative just needed a little tinkering. The characters needed a little love, and then I think you could have had something really, really special. But it's pretty common with horror films that they're sometimes pretty good but not amazing. I think. Well, I don't want to jump ahead. I'll hold my comment for now, and just say I think that's all I have on Hellraiser, and I'll give it to you if you have any other final thoughts you want to add on it.
For Hellraiser, I think Hellraiser was a lot of fun. I think that the score was really cool. I think the cinematography was really cool. I think it was a very cool movie. I think this is a movie where it's form over substance for sure. I think it's it's an experience at the what the fuck did they say? I keep forgetting the fucking quote. I can't fucking remember. I wish I could remember. Let's see if I can look it up.
Further, I already forgot it too.
It's a
explorers in the further regions of experience. I don't know if that's where you're
that's
looking.
That's it. Yeah, that's kind of what I was looking for. Of Sensations Rim.
Okay, it's a movie for explorers in the further regions of experience. If you're looking,
that's it.
To the further
if you're
regions
looking
of experience, try on Hellraiser for size.
Yeah, I think it's I think it's a cool. I think I don't know. I think it's I thought it was interesting and cool. And I think that the technical merits of the film exceeded the I would say probably sometimes the more important, more nuanced versions of the things of the film, like how it's written, the character development, this and that, right? The more narrative versions of the film are lacking, where the more visual and audible versions or portions of the film are, I think they're on fire. I think they're really cool. So form over substance.
Yeah. Style over substance, form over
That's
substance. It's a pretty classic case of that. But sometimes that's enough for an enjoyable experience. It
was enough for me.
Leaves you a little bit wanting, but yeah, like you said, sometimes that's enough. It was enough for you, and I enjoyed it. In spite of my grievances, I still enjoyed it. Certainly, I think it was, as far as modern horror movies go, not bad. You know what I mean? Like it's tough sledding a lot of the time with modern horror, but this one I thought was a pretty worthwhile adventure to the further regions of experience. So that's what I got. So I think by my count we're up to the modern decade. And indeed we are in 2022. We've covered a film from 2022, and that means that we've covered 7 decades of horror. Wow. It's a lot of years.
It's almost a century. 70 years, almost a century.
Almost a century. Yeah, it's a good thing we didn't do 10 films on this episode. Otherwise, it would be probably a little too much. But seven's a good number. Nice prime number, right? Something like that. So just to kind of wrap this up before we formally wrap things up. Do you have any final thoughts you want to offer on any of these 7 films? Were there any ones that stood out for you particularly? Like anything having had this October to experience 7 decades of horror, like anything coming?
What do I get? Yeah. So I think that the cool thing about horror films is, I think oftentimes the most unnerving thing isn't necessarily what you see, but the things that you don't. I think it's a classic case. We talked about it earlier, right? Less is always more. Specifically in horror. And I think that some of our films that we talked about, relish the fact in being seen. But then again, some of them didn't, right? So, you take something like Psycho, and it benefits mostly on the tension of not seeing anything at all. And I think that's really interesting. And actually, that's a quote. That's not a quote, not directly. But the beginning of The Endless quoted H.P. Lovecraft. And
yeah, that's right. Yeah,
and the greatest of fears is fear of the unknown, right? So, I think that horror as a genre has definitely grown from the decades that we've watched this month. It's people's sensibilities have grown, and they've changed, and they've morphed over the decades. Since the 60s, I would say that people have I would certainly say they've been desensitized to blood and gore. So we've gone from the 60s to where they make it black and white to make it less of a infraction, less of a problem, and then now in 2022 we have something like Hellraiser, where their clothes are made from mutilated flesh.
Right.
Exactly. And that's kind of
show that to the audience that showed up for Psycho and see what happens.
They throw up all over themselves. They just vomit on the moment they saw it. And that's the interesting things, right? So in the genre of horror, it seems like a perpetual thing of how do we leapfrog ourselves? How do we make the more impactful thing? How do we make the thing more just more of an event? And I think that the one thing that I like walk away with after watching so many fucking movies this month is, for me, the scariest film out of these 7 films was The Exorcist. Just made in the 70s. It's the most simple, and it's I mean, don't get me wrong, you have a little bit of blood, you got a little bit of like throwing up and stuff, you have a little bit of vulgarity, but
Jesus, fuck you.
it's mostly a simple film, right? I mean, it's there's not a lot of CG, there's not a lot of anything else. The score is classic. It's on a piano, you know. It's the most unnerving, scariest film out of everything we watched, I think, and it was made in the 70s, right? So, like, it makes you wonder what does it actually take? Do we need to show more blood? Do we need to show more guts? Do we need to show X, Y, and Z, you know? And I think the answer is no. I think really it starts with good characterization. It starts with a solid foundation of a story, you know? And it can be a simple story, too. It doesn't have to be anything convoluted or complex. It can be just a really simple thing. I don't know. Horror is one of those things where you watch a love story to feel, to feel one way or another. You know, you watch a story with loss and it makes you feel sad. You watch a animated film, and a lot of times, if you're an older person, well, if you're me, you cry with every fucking animated film, and it just makes you, just makes you like, it just draws you to like a bygone era, a time that it draws you. You watch these things to feel a certain way, and you watch horror to be scared, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And it's a feeling like in our modern. Like me, like I go day by day and I don't feel scared about much of fucking anything. Right? I can count probably on one hand the amount of times I feel scared in 1 year, right? Like there's not a whole lot of fear going on in my daily life as an American in Florida, right? And so to like watch these things and feel a way that like I don't feel in my daily life, it's interesting. It's a different experience, and it's I don't know, it's cool, right? So horror for me has always been a really awesome genre. It's always been something fun to dive into, and what makes people feel the way they feel. I think it's a really interesting thinking point, and the subgenres of horror are really interesting too, right? Like what makes a zombie movie scary? What makes a monster movie scary? Or what just makes just like the guy that owns the hotel scary, right? So, a lot of interesting things. I think it's a really cool genre in and of itself. It's been around for a very, 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 very long time. And obviously as the decades go by, the things that make things scary change, right? Like Dracula was written in like the 1890s. It's a monster thing, and it was mythological and religious and this and that. And then now we have like something like The Endless, which is just it's a science fiction kind of thing, right? Time loops and shit. And that's what we find scary now, or Hellraiser, these extraterrestrial or extra dimensional, I don't know what the fuck they are, but they're but they're different and they're scary, and it's just all of it's wildly interesting. That's the thing that scares people. So, not to talk on and on and on and on, but horror's cool. That's all I got.
Yeah. Well, I'm enjoying your thoughts, but I suppose we should wrap it up at some point, but I'm gonna try not to say a whole lot here, but I liked a lot of what you said. I mean, I agree with you. Like horror is like you want to be scared, and I think to tie into that, I do find that a lot of modern things that I watch don't really grip me in the same way that the best of the genre do. I think a lot of them kind of end up falling flat, or just something is missing, or like a jump scare or two. Obviously, yeah, okay, you jump once or twice, but like if you're not expecting someone to, tap on you or run into you, like, you're going to get startled by that. Like, it's not quite the same as like what the horror genre really, I think, at its best strives for.
But it can be, right?
But we know, like, the upper bounds of like what the horror genre can be. We've experienced some of it here. Yeah. So I think that, for your Hellraisers, your Endlesses, like those are, I think some pretty good modern examples of effective horror. I think like A Quiet Place is another one that I think has done pretty well with, playing with the genre and using like sound design to its advantage, stuff like that, like getting creative with it. Like, I think that's almost the key to me, is like, especially these days, like, we've seen it all. Like, we've seen people getting fucking, mercilessly just fucking slaughtered, torn limb from limb. We've seen zombies out the ass, especially with The Walking Dead. Like, how do you do it in a fresh way? Okay, well, you make it a comedy. All right, that's a bit different. Obviously we're talking about something that came out almost 20 years ago, but like, there are ways to make these things fresh and interesting. And like, even with Hellraiser, they played with the lore a little bit, made it a little bit more interesting. Like, that was appreciated. At the end of the day, like, do something new, do something different, do something that stands apart. I think it's a tough thing to try to do that. Many try, many fail, many are, have moderate success, I guess. But yeah, I mean, it's a really fun genre when it's done properly, or when it's done right. And some of it is obviously subjective. Some things are going to be scarier to others than they are for other people. Like, Anna is not a horror person at all. She fucking hates it. I have to watch most of this shit on my own. I guarantee if you watched any of these movies with her, something about it would have scared her. She wouldn't be caught dead watching a Hellraiser or anything, or The Exorcist. Like, absolutely, fuck not. Under no circumstances would she watch that. Because it would. I mean, it would give her nightmares. The Exorcist, I think I said, is a perfect horror film, and I agree with you. I think it's the best of the 7 that we talked about. I think it's the scariest of the 7. It doesn't give me nightmares.
No,
I think about it, and I think.
Right.
Like,
yeah, it sticks with
really
you.
Fucking well done. Like, it sticks with you. You think about it. And like, The Endless is another one, like, I'm thinking about it, because it's just like, it's timey-wimey shit. I'm like, all right, that's I'm thinking about it. But The Exorcist is the one that stands out of just like, oh man, like, there's just something about that film. There's just something about it.
And what is it?
Fucked, man. I don't know. All I can say is it's fucked. That's my conclusion, is I can say there's something fucked about that film. And I can't quite pinpoint it other than that. But I can't say that about any of these other films. Even Hellraiser, I can't say that's fucked.
No.
Not in the way that The Exorcist is. So I know if I'm feeling that way about it, that's not something that she's going to watch, because it would be bad news. It would be bad news. Let's put it that way. But yeah, I appreciated this opportunity to watch a handful of horror films. I don't do it as often because my wife is not a big horror.
Either do I, sir. We're in the same boat.
So you really have to carve out the time or take advantage of what time you can to spend time with movies like this. But it was a fun October, kind of, using this as a good excuse to do a deep dive into the horror genre. And it was really neat to see the progression of, oh God, black and white, someone's getting killed, to, people with mutilated flesh. Times have changed, that's for sure.
Times have certainly changed.
So yeah, really enjoyable. I'm glad we did this. Had a
lot of fun.
Good fun doing all this. So I think we should wrap it up. Yeah.
Yeah, let's wrap it up. It's time to go to bed.
Yeah. Thank you all for listening. If you enjoyed what you heard, spread the word. If you want to support us on Patreon at patreon.com/watchreviewrepeat, you can get timed exclusive access to bonus episodes such as this one that you just listened to. And I will again say thank you to those who have supported us on Patreon and either listened to this early or for whatever reason waited to the regular feed, didn't have time, couldn't work into the schedule. That's fine too. We appreciate your support all the same. Look forward to hopefully some future bonus episodes as we embrace, returning to regularity and normalcy and whatnot. But for those of you enjoying this on the regular feed, yeah, I know Halloween was a while ago, but you know what? You can watch horror anytime. It's fine. And so here we are. So our website is watchreviewrepeat.com. We're on the socials, at WRRpod on Twitter. And we are at Watch Review Repeat on Instagram. Search for us, Watch Review Repeat on Facebook. We have a page. You can follow us, like us there. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, anything you want to talk about horror related or otherwise, watchreviewrepeat@gmail.com. We can talk about it, certainly on a regular episode, or whenever it comes up. Our intro and outro track is Mechanolith by Kevin MacLeod and Incompetech.com, licensed under the Creative Commons by Attribution 3.0 license. So yeah, this is a bonus episode. I don't know what the next regular episode will be by the time this goes up on the regular feed. I can say that when we're recording, Black Panther's right around the corner. There's another Black movie, Black Adam, that we haven't had a chance to cover yet. We'll see if we get around to that. I don't know. You'll know before we do if you're listening to this right now. Quite honestly, how's that for some endless time loop shit right there?
Who sent the tape? Who sent it?
I don't know who did it, but I know that we'll do another bonus episode at some point in the future. I can't tell you what it is. And the reason I can't do that is because I don't know what it is. But we'll figure it out, and certainly we'll keep you in the loop. And our hope is that we can get out more than 2 bonus episodes in a year. That would be most ideal, I think, certainly. So, nonetheless, thank you all for listening yet again, and hope you enjoyed this bonus episode. Bonus episode 27, baby. Andrew, why don't you take us out?
Take care now. Bye bye then.
Later's on the Menche.